Mics are going on.
I'd like to call to order the December 5th, 2012 meeting of the Milton School Committee. And as is our custom, I invite you to rise with us and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, just to start, are there any corrections, amendments, additions to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Do we have anyone for citizen speak? We have no one for citizen speak. And we have no minutes to approve. They'll be on our next agenda, so we move to the superintendent's report right away.
Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek. This gives me great delight, and especially at the request of school committee members. First, may we ask football coach Jim Bowes and his coaching assistants and members of the football team to join the school committee at the table? Welcome. Coach Bowes, I'm going to have you make the introductions, or have the gentlemen introduce themselves, but School Committee Member Sheridan asked for you to come, and then all committee members were enthusiastic about seeing the football team, congratulating you, and telling you how proud the school committee, who can speak for themselves, I am, and the public of you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Gormley. We're very happy to be here, and thank you to Linda Lee for inviting us and the school committee members. It was an exciting end to the year. We had some kids that showed some great character and really fought back and played together as a team this year. And we have some representatives of the captains this year for the graduating class of 2013, and also the captains-elect for the graduating class of 2014. To my right is Tom McCarthy, volunteer assistant football coach with us today this year. Did an absolutely fantastic job, worked with the inside linebackers, and he also worked with the slot backs on offense. And down at the end, I think holding the trophy, do you have it there, Coach? Don't put it on the ground. Is Dan Jarbo, who's also a math teacher here and has been with us since the beginning as our special teams coach and defensive backs coach and wide receivers coach. And I'll let the young men introduce themselves right now, starting to my left right here.
You might want to take that mic out, hon, and pass it down.
Yeah.
My name's James Linehan, senior captain of 2013. I played right guard. It was a great way to go out with a bang, just a great way to end my football career. Just the other caps were Andrew Hunt, Connor Regan, and Kareem Patterson. They also did great, and it's great playing with them.
My name's Chua Loomis. I'm a captain-elect for next year. Like you said, it was a great way to go out, and I hope to do the same thing next year. I play inside linebacker and fullback.
My name's Liam Collins. I'm a quarterback, captain of 2014. It's a great way to end the season. Happy we could do it for all the seniors.
My name is Zach Mazzarella. I play right offensive tackle. Just a great way to end the season.
I'm Colin O'Brien, captain next year. Last year was fun, but see if we can do it again next year.
Thank you for having me. My name is Dan Jarbo, and I teach math and I coach here. And a great group of kids. I love the opportunity to work with them, and this was a great season.
Well, thank you very much. Nice job, men. And we really appreciate being here today. It was really exciting. I was talking with Ms. Gormley before we started of the excitement that was around the school, with the teachers, with the students. The crowd was one of the best I can remember into the game, chanting, paying attention on 3rd and 1 and fun stuff like that. And it really meant a lot to these guys, and it's a testimony to their character, to the way that we played. So,
Great. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I want to add that I said to Coach Bowes and to each of the football players here, I'm not an athlete, but what amazes me is that every student at Milton High School thought they were out there playing with you at every game, and how they take such pride in your accomplishments, and you make them proud of their high school. And so it's an unbelievable phenomenon what high school athletics can create in a school. And I said to Coach Bose, even that pep rally, you didn't even need a teacher or an administrator or supervisor there. All of those students wanted to wish you well, and they were in that game with you and in every game. And they took great pride in yours and all of the sports that have taken place, their wins and their losses. But you gave a lot of pride to Milton High this season.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course, just a wonderful job, and I'm just so proud of you all. But I do want to ask if we can look for your leadership for the walkathon on February 12th, I believe it is, so we can honor the football team there as well. They have to be there, so if you can make sure they're all there.
You've got it. We'll be there in
That
force.
would be great.
Of course.
Just get that in.
Nicely done.
You just make us so proud, and not just the school, but I want to say that town-wide, you know, for alums that come back to that game every year, it's a real treat, and thanks from the town.
Well, thank you very much. It was very, very, very exciting and gratifying, and, you know, I think that the cheerleaders and the band, they did such a great job for us this year, and it's quite an atmosphere, and people took advantage of it. You know, even at the beginning of the year, they knew that these guys were playing hard.
Well, they represent their team well. If I,
Go ahead.
a little note, there's somebody among you who wears, well, many of you wear several hats, but Mr. McCarthy wears another hat in that he is on the Park and Rec Board. So I asked him tonight, on top of being a volunteer football coach, and I heard it's a match, that volunteer position, would you give the school committee and the public an update on the development of the Pierce Field and the sodding and where we are? I think to hear from you, who almost laid that sod himself, it would be a wonderful story for the viewing public and the school committee.
Yes, well, first, let's thank everybody here at this table and my board as well for getting that job done. So, the status is, the sod is down. We couldn't ask for a better situation. We put it down in the snow, but it didn't get too cold. The weather this week and going forward is perfect for what we're trying to do. So I have no issues and no reservations. I think that field will be playable this coming spring.
Great news story. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very, oh, sorry.
I just want to say thanks on behalf of the town and the school committee. Most people might remember the season started a little slow, and you guys demonstrated, coaches and the team demonstrated a real courage and commitment to turn that around, and the finish was more than any of us could ask for, so we're really proud of all of you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Next, I'd like to invite to the table Dr. Noreen Diamond Burdette, the Director of our Fine and Applied Arts Program, music teacher Gary Good, and Milton High School student Andrew Moe. Good evening. So we have all of these good news stories. Member Walker asked lobby for the music and the chorus. We share all of the good news, and we wanted to get you right here in person and congratulate you. So Dr. Noreen Diamond Burdette, would you set the scene of the stiff competition in the area and the history of these accomplishments?
Sure. I feel like the proud mother with my older child and my younger child. Very, very proud of both of them. We'll start with my younger child here. Andrew is just an extraordinary student here at Milton High School. He's one of the co-presidents of the chorus. He is in the gospel choir. He's in the Do Re Migos. He's in the Christmas Carolers. And what did I leave out? And the boy, oh no, the boys group, I said that. and the mixed after-school group, I'm sorry. And he had an outstanding lead, of course, in Footloose last year and in Hairspray this year.
Very nice.
He is one of those people who is quiet, but such a leader by his example. He's always prepared, he's so dedicated, committed, practices all the time. And he's also in the Music 3 honors class and doing a fabulous job, and the guitar class, I believe. Oh, my goodness. So, he has made district, he's made all-state, and last year at the all-state, his score was so high that it gets put into the next category, and that's All-Eastern Division. And this is basically Northeast United States, not just, our district is called Eastern District, so it's a little confusing, but this is Eastern Division of the United States. So it's all of New England and New York and Pennsylvania and Delaware, Maryland, what am I leaving out? New Jersey, the American schools in Europe, and Washington, D.C. So, 5 people in the past 35 years have made it this far, and Andrew is the 5th. Go, Andrew.
So your involvement in music, and it's almost bittersweet with this year, and your accomplishments. We find a great amount of pride in. Dr. Burdette makes us all feel like we're part of your family. She shares, before she leaves those events, what the accomplishments and the honors that you earn, and we are so proud of you. So proud of you, and you really symbolize all of, Mr. Phelan has a wonderful expression that no one has to leave the Milton Public Schools because it's the finest art and music program that you could find anywhere, and you exemplify maximizing all of those experiences and all of those aspects of the program. Very, very proud of you. Congratulations.
When did you start with your music?
I was in chorus like since elementary school in Tucker.
Okay. Good. Good to know. Thank you.
Ms. Padera.
Well, I'd just like to say that you're extremely famous at the elementary level. All the kids know who you are. My kids know, their friends know, they pointed you out right away. That's the kid that was in Footloose. And so, I mean, if they, I think they'd follow you around if they knew where to find you. But I got to see your performance at Hairspray, as I think a lot of us did. I miss Footloose. That was at the school, and that was enough for the kids. They were raving about it. But you're just wonderful, and we're so happy to have you.
Go ahead.
I have a question about next year. Do you plan to pursue music in college?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
That's great. In what lens? What?
I haven't really figured out whether I want to do like education or technology or performance, but somehow I'm planning on doing music in some way.
Wonderful.
Well, if it's education, Andrew, you can come back here and always be informed.
Wish you luck with that, Andrew.
Mr. Walker.
Congratulations to Noreen and to Gary, to Andrew, and to the, I think, 22 other students that were recognized in some way.
Right, for making district this year.
Yeah.
And then 12 of them will be auditioning in 2 weeks for places in All-State this year.
I'm proud of all of you.
When is the All-Eastern Division?
That's the first weekend in April.
Do you have to prepare, audition for that one as well, or is this as a result of?
Just learn all the music that they'll send.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Haven't gotten it yet. And it's the same weekend, good segue into my older child here. Mr. Good, I think we figured out this is your 15th year, or you've been here for 15
Something
years,
like
and it's
that,
like, we're not sure. But it seems like he's been here forever, right? He's such a part of the music department. And he has been selected to be the conductor this year for the Senior SEMSPA Music Festival. Happens to be the same weekend, so he'll be in Hartford, and we're not sure where it's going to be yet. But we're very honored to have him be the conductor this year for the SEMSPA
Huge
Festival.
Was this a result of the weekend with the 1,000
Well, that was district.
Oh.
That's district. SEMSBA and district are different.
The SEMS auditions haven't happened. They'll be in
Right,
February.
they're in February, first weekend in February.
And for those of us that aren't familiar with the music and arts acronyms, SEMSA
Oh,
is...
SEMSBA, Southeastern Massachusetts School Band Masters Association.
Great.
Yeah, there are 30 towns that are part of it. It's like a private
Say
country
it.
club of Eastern District.
Right, it's a private group.
And so the
Which we're
students from
part of.
those 30 towns audition for orchestra, band, and chorus.
And so I've gotten educated about this. When you go to this competition, you'll have students from all different areas, and he'll work with them and then present in the afternoon.
A concert the next day,
Yeah,
right?
so it's 2 days. 2 days of rehearsal.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yes.
I just want to say, I've had the privilege and honor of participating in many of your music events and watching my children go through your programs, and you are such a vital part of the music program here in Milton, and it's a great opportunity for us to honor you through this honor that you've been given. So thank you for all your work with our children.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have one thing to ask Andrew. Andrew, when you were in elementary school, do you think chorus and music class impacted your interest in music?
Of course, yeah. That's the only reason why I like stuck with chorus, because I always knew that like I could sing. Like I never like it was just like a thing. Like I never knew that I could like actually do it to like have fun. Because like in elementary school, like a lot of people were in chorus back when I was in whatever fifth grade. Most of the kids were in chorus, so they had to take music. And in doing that, like we all learned like the recorder or like just chorus class and like just the introduction to like music and all that. That's the reason why I did music in middle school, because it wasn't like weird, So now it's like a select group of people who like stuck with it to high school, but that's the reason why I picked up the saxophone when I was in elementary school, just because it had like music stuff like that. So
It's interesting that because to be an adult to realize that you have that gift would be, the timing would have, the opportunity would have to be there. And we're talking about science, and when we're reading about all of these studies in science, they say scientists know, what kind of program they have at the elementary school, whether that's going to be their passion, and that gets them on that track to love and excel in science. And so you're the perfect example of the music, and when you're in elementary school, those gifts start to grow, and then they grow all through school. And another thing about Andrew, you're talented, you're gifted and talented, and you achieve, and as Ms. Padera said, the children know who you are, but it's also your personality, and you have a presence at Milton High School, and you have a smile, and you respond, and you're a genuinely unusual young man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I have to say, before we close, I said to Ms. Padera today, Ms. Padera toured Milton High, and my story about Gary Good is I can say I was the proud principal who hired Gary Good. It was less than 100 years ago. But when we headhunted Gary from another community, and when I interviewed him, he said, I can't leave that community. Those children need me. I said, oh, we need you, Gary. We need you in the Milton Public Schools, and we were fortunate enough that he joined us and stayed, and you're a huge contributing member. So we got to see him in the electronic music lab today, and we heard about Gary is in adult ed, and he has 3 different levels of classes. If you're available on Wednesday nights for music, for piano lessons, and there have been some famous people in Milton who have gone through Gary's music classes and gone on to higher levels.
That's right.
Congratulations to both of you, and thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
all.
Maureen Diamond Burdett.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, joining us, we're very proud, our first Collycott Site Council, reporting out our first school site council. Would you join us at the table? And I'll rely on Principal Janet Sheehan to do the introductions. In your packet, you have Collicott's presentation and their school improvement plan. Welcome. We're very fortunate that teachers and parents
Thank you,
agreed to
Superintendent
serve on
Gormley.
these important site councils.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce our teacher representative, one of our teacher representatives from the Collicott School, Zena Hamada. And we also have one of our parent representatives. We have Patty Facey. So I'd like to thank them for joining us this evening. And we'd also like to thank our other site council members who were not able to join us this evening, but they certainly participated in the school improvement plan development process, and we thank them for all of their support. So as we planned our improvement plan, we of course began by considering the Milton Public Schools core values, and under each of these, under the core values are district goals that were also the focus of our goals. And we'll first look at our accountability data, and I know that this is probably already familiar to you. I think you've probably seen this from the different elementary schools and other schools in the district in some of the district presentations. If we look at this, this just generally first gives us school information, general school information, the accountability and assistance level. Of course, all of our schools in the district are level 1 schools, and that's because they are meeting the gap and gap narrowing goals. But if you also note, next to our level 1 designation, the Collicott was commended for high progress and for narrowing the proficiency gaps. So we were commended in 2 areas. The next part of the this accountability data information is looking at a percentile rank. So the Collicott School received a ranking of, this is a percentile of 87, and this number just means that this is where we stand in comparison to other elementary schools, so other pre-K to 5 schools. When we look at the rest of the data, we see that we met the target in all areas, and any score, this is based on a 100-point system, any score above 75 means that we have met the target for that subgroup or for the whole group. So we have included the growth percentile rankings, and we think that this gives a good picture of school growth. This is a representation of student growth over the previous year, and this is compared to our students' academic peers. So in ELA, this is the overall school achievement and growth. For the school, you will see that all grades are represented in the gray. Grade 4 is represented in the dark green, and grade 5 represented in the yellow. So looking at the median student growth percentile, that would be moderate growth, and you can see that all students scored in the high growth and high achievement area. Next, in mathematics, again, we see that the X represents moderate growth, and again, our 4th and 5th graders and all students who scored on the MCAS were in the high growth and higher achievement categories. So we also thought that we should include the certificate that was just sent by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, so we will find a nice place for that in our school. Then we included the performance level comparisons for ELA, math, and science. So these are, this
tells us that the Collycott scored higher than the state and consistent with the district. And this was in all areas, but we're going to take a look at each of the content areas separately. So as we looked at the scores over the last 2 years, we analyzed the data. And we found that in grades 3 to 5, all student group performance levels were higher than the state, as just noted. In grade 3, there was little change in the number of students scoring in the advanced and proficient categories, but there was an increase in students who scored in the advanced category, and this is a trend that we saw this year, that many of our students moved into the advanced category. And we think that this trend is due to higher expectations and teachers' deeper understanding of the expectations of the Common Core and the rigor that is expected in planning instruction. In grade 4, we saw a significant increase in students scoring in the advanced and proficient categories, and you see that that's from 76% to 87%, and a significant increase again in the advanced category from 12% to 30%. In grade 5, we did have a slight decrease in the total student scoring in combined advanced and proficient categories, but again, we saw a significant increase in students scoring in advanced. So that was in all grade levels that we saw an increase of students scoring at the advanced level. We also looked at our students with disabilities, and while there are numerous subgroups that are tested, at the Collycott, students with disabilities were the only group that provided us with the data that allowed us for a deep analysis. So our grade 3 students with disabilities showed a significant increase in their scores in the advanced and proficient categories, so they moved from 40% to 50%, and we saw a decrease in the warning and failing categories from 20 to 6%. I mean, we do recognize that these numbers are great, but we do recognize that cohorts, from one cohort to the next cohort, there can be varying levels of performance. We did not have enough students in our grade 4 group to look at the data for students with disabilities. And in grade 5, we saw a great increase in student scoring in the warning failing categories, but we also saw that increase in students scoring in the advanced categories. We did have students with disabilities moving into that category. So then we looked at our strengths in ELA and our challenges. This information is based on results by learning standards that is provided to us by the state data. And so looking at these, looking at the learning standards, we see the challenges in ELA at each of the grades. We did a deeper analysis by our school teams. Our K-5 teachers all did an MCAS, all participated in an MCAS analysis. So while we took a closer look, we found that our findings were consistent with the standards analysis. But then we also made some recommendations and we did some action planning with more specifics around instruction and interventions that needed to occur. So now we're looking at the performance level comparison in mathematics, and again, we found that our students they performed higher than students across the state, and again, consistent with district scores, and maybe a little higher in math. Okay. Yes. And the data analysis, again, are based on our 2012 data, indicated, again, group performance levels were higher than the state. In grade 3, we did have a decrease in students scoring in the advanced and proficient levels, but again, an increase in students scoring at the advanced level. In grade 4, We saw an increase in the number of students scoring in advanced and proficient, so that continued. That is a trend that we're seeing in grade 4. And in grade 5, we again saw an increase in students scoring in advanced and proficient, and saw an increase in more students scoring in the advanced category. And as we look at our students with disabilities, in grade 3, consistent with our whole student group, we saw a decrease in the total number in advanced and proficient, and again, an increase in students scoring in the advanced category. We did not have enough students in our disabilities subgroup to report on that. And in grade 5, we did see in math a significant increase in the number of students scoring in advanced and proficient. So that was from 42% to 54%. We did, however, see an increase in our students scoring in the warning and failing categories. So this is compared now to last year's fifth graders, the numbers that you're seeing. So the increase was from 8% to 27%. So when we looked back at this cohort of students, we saw that this cohort last year had 15% of students scoring in the warning category. And again, that was an increase. But looking over a period of 3 years, we did note that this is consistent with this group. Now, we do have some work to do. These students are now at the Pierce Middle School, and I know that the team there is identifying students who, who scored in the needs improvement or warning categories. But we do know that we have work to do with this group of students. We did have, in this cohort, a large number of students whose disabilities were in the language area, and we know that that is a challenge in our math program. As we look at the challenges and strengths according to the results by learning standards, we see that open response and short answer continue to be a challenge. And we again did a deeper analysis by our school team, and there were recommended actions for each grade that are very specific so that teachers have a toolkit for addressing those needs. So now we're taking a look at the performance level comparisons for science, technology, and engineering. And again, consistent with the other content areas, Collicott students scored above students at the state level, and consistent with district scores. So the data analysis indicated that we had an increase in the number of students scoring in advanced and proficient, and our students with disabilities also showed an increase in their scores in the advanced and proficient categories. So while we have a lot of work to do in the area of science, we are seeing a trend with student improvement, and do have some actions in place that we'll talk about. Again, according to results by standards, we see that there are many challenges on science topics. We looked at the percent of students scoring correctly, and we used 70% or below as a guide for identifying the challenges here. And again, a further analysis provided action steps for improvement. So after looking at the data, we would like to talk about initiatives to meet all of the challenges. And here you see our grade 1 engineers. And they have been working, they began the year in our STEM program, working on becoming familiar with building with Legos and building vocabulary. They learned the steps in the design process, and one of their projects was to build a fast car and to consider all of the factors that would make it faster or slower and so forth. So that was a very exciting project for them, and you can see how proud they are in this picture. So first, one of our initiatives is to create flexible grouping and explicit targeted instruction. We have identified students who have scored in the needs improvement and warning or failing category in order to close the achievement gap. We're implementing multiple assessment tools to inform instruction, challenging students at all levels, and continuing our grade 3 model of flexible grouping and hoping to implement the same model in grades 2 and 4 this year. At the grade 5 level, they also do flexible grouping. They call it boot camp, grade 5 boot camp, to prepare for the MCAS. At this time, Zena Hamada and Patty Facey would like to talk about some of our proficiency gap initiatives, and I'm going to hand this over to them.
So what are teachers doing in the classroom to close those gaps? First of all, we see across the classrooms from grade K to 5 differentiated instruction. Everybody's, targeting all levels of learning in their classroom. And we're also RTI strategies are identified, that's response to intervention, through student support team, and we progress and monitor the progress. Reading support in both French and English, ongoing development of common English language arts assessments, also math assessments across the district actually, and then the two teams in both ELA and math, put all those together and identify gaps. As we said, the flexible groups across grade levels to provide targeted instruction by classroom. Teachers, special ed teachers, specialists. It's currently in place in grade 3. Grade 2 and 4 are going to implement that model also. We have before and after school math clubs for grade 4 and 5. Grade 5 math boot camp, open response activities, integration of technology tools like the smartboard, iPads, document cameras. Many classrooms have also received clickers, and that helps teachers identify, I don't want to say weaknesses, but where they need more instruction and reteaching. We provide access to computers to all students who have limited access at home, at the computer lab, or in the classrooms. During snack, during lab, computer lab time, we were talking about probably opening the computer lab before school. Sharing student presentations in science topics with grade 5 for review. Keeping science notebooks. They do science notebooking in grades 3 to 5. Continental math meets. Grade 3, 4, 5 started. Grade 2 will start in January. Study Island. Everyday math online. So all of these are being, done to support on the teacher side. On the parent side also, there's a lot of support.
Yes. So for the parents, a lot of parents come in and volunteer with the Meet the Artist program, and parents at home are working on Study Island with their children at home, and also Everyday Math online. There's a Math is a Slam Dunk program. The PTO runs a math league before school, so parents are volunteering for that, and then it's also parents bringing their kids to the school to get that extra help in math. Math games where parents come into the classroom during the day and work with small groups. The computer lab support, the One Book, One School event, and also the cultural and curriculum enrichment with the programs. So parents are really, they really help out the Collicott, so.
We couldn't do it without them. Thank you. So another initiative would be to implement research-based reading and writing practices. So we are working towards providing a balanced approach to literacy, assessing to monitor student progress and engaging students at independent or instructional levels. We have our new ELA coordinators who are working with the teachers. They're in the classrooms. They're coaching teachers and supporting them in these initiatives. We're piloting Reader's Workshop in grade 1, although Reader's Workshop practices are seen in other classrooms, but there is a model of instruction that is being piloted in grade 1, along with the new Open Court program. And we have things in place to implement a Writer's Workshop model in kindergarten, working with Ada Rosemarin. We're working towards engaging students in daily writing and practicing test-taking skills for open response and short answers. Another initiative is to increase inclusion opportunities, and we are seeing the results of those efforts already, just by the improvement in our scores of students with disabilities. We're facilitating a push-in model to support students with disabilities when we can. Maintaining access to the curriculum in the least restrictive environment, and implementing strategies to close the achievement gap and support students in meeting targets. Then we have our district initiatives. So we have district teams that are working on ELA math and science curriculum alignment. We have teams developing common assessments. Our focus through our administrative learning walks and is on the topic of engaging all learners and differentiated instruction. We have our STEM program initiative, and then this year we're also going to be working on the development of the new teacher evaluation tool, which we expect will lead to increased school improvement as well. And then we have our, we next have our school improvement plan summary, and each of the goals that the district has under each of our core value topics, we connected and just highlighted some of those goals. But you have those in your packet in the more specific school improvement plan, but we just highlighted a few in each of these areas, which I won't read to you because you do have them, but we just wanted to include those in the presentation. This, by the way, happens to be a picture of a visiting class from Quebec last year. They visited one of our French classes, and that just shows the collaborative relationship there, actually, and additional goals. We thank you very much.
That's going to get the lights. You know how much work goes into these school improvement plans and the time the teachers and principals and administrators give to the site councils. So we appreciate your efforts and, again, coming up with a plan for moving the Collicott ahead.
If I may, I would like to thank you for being here tonight and in meeting with Principal Sheehan, and then we look at a lot of the district scores across all 6 schools, and it's very nice to be able to isolate one school's scores. And it's so impressive. We look at student growth, but we also look at student achievement, so where the students are in terms of how many are advanced and proficient, but also how well they're doing against their cohort that they are measured against. And when you see the Collicott student growth where they're up in the upper right quadrant, it's about as high as you can go and it's about as right as you can go. And that means that they're doing that good work each year. And the Collycott has received accommodations, I believe, 3 of the last 4 years or 2 of the last 3 years. So this is a school that maintains high levels of achievement, and that is definitely indicated by 84% of all of the Collycott students in math are in advanced or proficient, 84%, and 80% are advanced or proficient in ELA. So when you're doing that and you're moving your students with disabilities forward, which is your only subgroup, and your high needs is making it, there is work to do with individual students who we would like to see all of those students at that high level, but the unique combination of high performance and high growth on an annual basis, I think, is a great accomplishment of your staff and of you, Principal Sheehan, and the work of the parents. That the Collycott is a very full and busy place with people who don't get paid to be there, but get their work done by volunteering on behalf of the teachers and their children. And it's a great school to be in, and you can feel it, and the student achievement data points to a lot of good things happening. So congratulations, and I appreciate all of your hard work.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Madera.
Thank you very much. I obviously just toured your school and was very impressed with everything you're doing there, so thank you. I just have a question about the science scores, because I think all the schools are pretty similar, and that seems to be the struggle. They do very well and still above state level, but that's where some improvement can be. I'm just questioning, maybe you know the answer to it, or the superintendents, the challenges under the science and tech scores, are those similar in other schools? Is it the similar topics that we're, we could improve upon? Do you know, or?
Okay, well, I'll try that. I mean, while I haven't looked closely at the individual school data, the other schools, I believe that it is consistent, and I think that we all recognize that we want to align the standards with our curriculum. I think that we also recognize the challenges of 5th grade taking on all of the science topics.
Yeah.
And so we have, as a school, tried to talk about how we could help, because they have to teach new information and they have to review all of the science information from previous years. So we think that some of the things we have in place are going to help around it. So for one thing, we think the STEM initiative is going to take care of a lot of the engineering piece. We think that our children will come well prepared to 5th grade with engineering concepts. We have in the last 2 years we have brought outdoor classroom education to the school. So we feel that that's going to that's more concrete learning. We have challenges with science materials and sharing them, and we recognize all of those challenges, and we have a team that's working on that. And I think that we will implement all of the recommendations from the team. But in the meantime, we've talked about things like one of the things that Madame Hamada just noted was that we talked about sharing among students. So our 5th graders who are in the process of learning new material in science, 5th grade teachers thought that maybe our grades 3 and 4 students could share presentations or actually share lessons. So any of their lesson outcomes in science could be shared with the 5th graders, some of the essential learning. And we thought that might be a nice way to sort of buddy up and participate in some of the science review. So we've come up with some ideas like that.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Oh, yes.
Great job. No. It sounds like great. Once again, great things are happening at Collycott. Just to piggyback on the science question, when we first started testing just English and math, we said, we need to spend more time on this. I guess, have we analyzed time on task within the science curriculum? And then the other question I would have is science and French being taught in French? And does that create some obstacles to attaining, the proficiency that we'd like to get to?
Well, science is being taught in French, and I think that there has been a tremendous effort to translate materials and to increase the access to materials and resources. So I think that we've seen quite a change in that over the past year or so. And I think that as far as scheduling science into the school day, I think that we're working with our coordinator now, and especially with the new STEM initiative, where we're seeing a lot of our science coordinator, and we're working that out.
Could I just add to that? And with the new Common Core, I think that as we watch the science curriculum come online in January of 2013 and get very familiar with it, that we will probably have to redistribute our minutes at the elementary level in terms of what does ELA represent in terms of minutes in a day, in math and science, because the Common Core is really asking us to do those things with each other. So we want to be reading and writing more in science. So is that science or is that ELA? So we're really going to start to analyze the time allotment per subject, but also recognize that they're asking us to do things together. So we want to be reading and writing more in science. We want to be reading and writing more in math. So we might not be able to differentiate the minutes so cleanly as we have in the past. And I believe science will gain by that because we'll be able to use nonfiction text, i.e. science text, more when we're doing literacy lessons in Reader's Workshop or Writer's Workshop, et cetera. So we look forward to getting that curriculum out from the national standards. And it seems like they've been coming out every 6 months for the last 36 months. So we hope this is the last 6-month waiting period. But we look forward to that challenge as a district to view the whole day of an elementary teacher and student so we can incorporate as much science, math, and ELA as possible.
And thanks to the MFE, we're increasing our science nonfiction selections in the classrooms due to a recent grant, so that's very positive, too.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, it was interesting to see in the challenges across English and math and science, it was that open response. It was that, and it's, in the practice standards for all of them is that to be able to write in English, to be able to write in math and in science. So it makes perfect sense that it becomes a question of amalgamating these topics so that by practicing one, we're practicing many and so forth. Mr. Walker, did you have your hand?
I did. So first, congratulations. It's a real compliment to you and your leadership and the team's work and parents' work that you can't achieve these results without all of those different groups working together. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Padera and Ms. Kelly asked most of the questions I had. So I think what comes through on this presentation is the science. That's, I think, where the real questions are. And so just a real technical question. On the slide where you talk about strengths and challenges, they did well on the water cycle, they did well on sound energy, they didn't do well on rocks and their properties and weather. Does that give you any actionable information? I mean, are those assessing different skills, or how do you interpret that?
Well, sometimes in the analysis, we see that there may only be 1 or 2 questions on that topic. So students might have some content knowledge that is not as specific as what was asked. However, we feel that, it gives us enough information to know that there has to be more of a focus on those areas. And as I said, some of the things that we have in place, we feel that will have an impact. We haven't evaluated the impact of the outdoor classroom education in the last couple of years yet. We do need to evaluate the effectiveness of that. The teachers accompany the students, and they use our nature trail that we have right on campus. And so we do have to look at that. I'm getting positive feedback generally, but we're hoping that that and the STEM initiative will make a difference, along with the increased resources. And that's our hope. When the teachers do their own analysis, though, they do look at each question and try to identify whether or not it was a test-taking skill that was the cause of of students not scoring well, and sometimes it is. It might be the way the question was asked. It might be that they made a notation that students need to recognize what words in bold or italics mean, that they're looking for a definition, rather than some other meaning in the question. So they do look very closely at every question that's available. Of course, they don't provide us with every question that's on the test either, so it becomes kind of a guessing game at times, but we do our best with that analysis.
Thanks.
If I might clarify, last year's Celebration for Education from the MFE dedicated $15,000 to each elementary school for Masha Uretsky came up with the idea, a takeoff of what happened in New York City, and in each classroom, there's going to be a foundation library. And so if you're a first-year teacher, you might not have the classroom library of, as Mr. Phelan and Principal Sheehan spoke of, science books. Or you might not have the social studies topics for students to read. And again, they're in the library, but to have the classroom libraries to be able to set up those reading centers within your classrooms. So the principals have worked with our language arts coordinators, and those purchases are about to be made and put in every elementary classroom in the Milton Public Schools. An extraordinary amount of work has been done around matching those topics to the grade appropriate areas and reviewing all the topics. We've talked about the success of the beginning of the implementation of STEM in the first grade, and we tell the story. We saw a picture, and we've got, we went in, Mr. Phelan and I, on your learning walk, went into one of the first grades, but from the source, would you share with the school committee and the public your first impressions of the STEM implementation in the first grade?
Well, I think that when we originally looked at the program, we saw that it was there was discussion around whether or not it was more appropriate for grade 2 versus grade 1, and I think that this is a great demonstration of what it means to have high expectations for students, because they're meeting the expectations. And what we're seeing is that there are wonderful opportunities for students who may not have the readiness skills yet to be successful in other areas, whether it be written work or even at their reading level, but they're good thinkers, and they're learning problem-solving skills, and they're learning the steps in the design process. And what we're seeing in action is students actually demonstrating perseverance, because they have to, one of those steps in the process is that they have to go back and redesign if they haven't solved the problem. So they consider the problem, and then they make a plan, and they make a design, and if it doesn't work, after they evaluate it, they have to go back and redesign. And they've been greatly successful, because not only with the race cars, they had to build a chair for a teddy bear. And so it's still developmentally appropriate, and there are motivating topics for the children, but they actually had to build a chair in which the teddy bear would stay if they dropped it. And so if it didn't work, you would see them going back. They'd go back and they'd redesign again. So it's been fascinating. The other thing that I'm seeing is that students are generalizing some of the skills that they're learning in their science class, in the STEM classes. They're generalizing in other areas. So they're working better in their small groups in an ELA class. They're more apt to interact and problem solve. So we're seeing sort of a carryover of skills, and I think that is really very impressive.
Ms. Bagley-Jones had asked, and in January, there's going to be, we're still in the planning stages, a night for parents, so they can really, community members, see what's happening in STEM. And then it's grown to the extent that the middle and high school wants to send a sampling of what STEM means at the middle and high. But Principal Sheehan, you spoke to the students and the carryover to other disciplines, but I thought it was interesting, and you'll be flattered, I said very important are how the teachers feel about the implementation of STEM and the professional development. Your reaction to how the teachers feel?
Well, I think they're very excited and very enthusiastic. I think that science has kind of taken on kind of a new meaning for them, and I think they see the value in preparing students for a different world. And I think that they see the number of skills that are actually involved in this initiative. So I think that while we have had many challenges, given that we have our combined classes between Collycott and Cunningham, we have a nice strong team there. These three teachers have worked together beautifully. on this STEM initiative and others. And so I think that there are, many positive outcomes as a result. They've really worked as a cohesive team, and we see a high level of enthusiasm around the STEM lessons. They've had a lot of support too. We must, credit Marilyn Decker with supporting this effort. She's in the classroom and modeling for students, and really offering a lot of guidance.
Ms. Kelly?
Could you just talk a little bit about the Reader's Workshop that you want to do in grade 1? What exactly is that?
Well, I understand that there was professional development offered a few years ago in the Reader's Workshop model, and it's really an approach to literacy that includes shared reading and writing, and responding to literature, and it's conferencing. Pardon me.
By genres, yeah.
Yes, by genres, and conferencing with students, and a lot of the practices teachers are implementing using their open court program. So they're really best practices in reading and writing, this model in first grade is being implemented with our new ELA coordinators, and our teachers, just a representation of teachers, just visited the Needham Public Schools to see Reader's Workshop in action. So it's they observed learning centers, small group instruction, a mini lesson, and so forth. So it's a model, it's an approach that is highly motivating for students, and the approach is the philosophy behind it is that students are learning all of the basic components of a balanced literacy program, but in an authentic way with literature that is rich.
Dr. Jones.
Just a couple of questions and comments. It's, as everybody else has said, congratulations. It's wonderful to see. I do want to say a little bit of a different thing, that I do think elementary teachers are jacks of all trades. And we forget that, because at middle school and high school, we have science specialists. We have all these other specialists. In elementary, you're it. You do English, math, science, every single thing. And that's really important to phrase this in. The science... I'm sorry?
I just said to Zena, you could speak to that.
Yes, And the science issue, this gives you a comment about how much stuff collects in my house, but we found my daughter's grade 5 science book from the Collicott from Annie McIntyre, and she looked at it, she said, wow, this was really good, and this really helped me. In what grade did they take biology? Grade 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We did, this really helped me in grade 9 biology, from 5th grade to grade 9, and I know she went into Pierce very well prepared in science in grade 6. So yes, MCAS scores are very important. Yes, they are, but they're not the end-all to be-all, just in my opinion. But putting that aside, I do see with the ELA that we did really well in grade 3, kind of well in 4th grade, but kind of went down in 5th grade. And I guess that's just concerning. Math didn't look like it went that trend. So with the ELA, I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that, especially because 5th grade, they not start to really know by then what their scores mean, and they're going to 6th grade. And they really need that in 6th grade. So thoughts about what that trend is?
Well, as I previously noted, there are times when we look at a cohort and we look at their performance over time. So we're comparing our student performance to the previous year's student performance. But if we look at the cohort of students that have gone through for 3 years of MCAS scores, then we see some of the challenges that cohort has had.
So that's
and again, our goal is to move our goal is to move them ahead, and that has been a challenge with this particular cohort.
Can I ask a couple more? So the inclusion piece, you talked about wanting to do significant push-in, and I guess, okay, this is going to sound, is that really new push-in, or is that recycled with the same limited resources? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, to really do inclusion push-in, what resources do you need, and do you have those resources?
So by push-in, what we mean is that the special education teacher will go into the classroom and co-teach with the classroom teacher, so that the student is not missing.
Yes.
The student has access to the curriculum and is not learning skills in isolation. While there are some students whose disabilities call for a pull-out model, where they need such specialized instruction that it can't happen in the classroom. Our goal is for students to access the curriculum and not have to play catch-up after being pulled out.
And maybe I should have rephrased that. Do you really have the resources you need to do that? That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, we do right now. While, every school, if they, if they wished, would like to have more staff to really implement a response to intervention model for all students who are challenged, who may not have disabilities but are just challenged. I mean, we're always looking for resources and trying to be creative, but we use our student support team well as a resource. We bring our specialists together, and they offer interventions and they offer support in any way that they can. And generally, at our team meetings and in our student support team, we talk a lot about how children can access that curriculum and what is the best place in which these children can receive their interventions.
Can I ask one more? Does somebody else have a question? You can go. The picture of the cars with the first graders, it's so funny because in grade 10, they're doing the same thing in physics up here. They who can build the fastest mousetrap. And it is the highlight of the physics class up at the high school. So it's just amazing to me how it all really builds on each other.
What will be added to this project now is that the children will actually attach a sail to a car, and so that's another step.
And then
exciting.
My last comment was just, you touched on this, and I guess I'd like to see this from all of the schools. The MCAS scores and all the other scores are very important, but things like parent involvement, teacher morale, good communication with the principal. Do kids like coming to school at the Collicott? I think they do, but do they like coming to school? Are they engaged in learning? Yeah, those are all the things I really like, and those are harder to objectify and to put on a chart. But to me, that's also what we look at with school improvement. My sense is that is all happening at the Collicott. But I'd really like to hear more, not now, but I'd like to hear more of that when the schools come to present. You did cover a lot of it, but I myself would like to hear more.
I think that on behalf of the Collicott School, and they just had the fundraiser about 2 weeks ago for the One Book, One School that was packed at the Abbey Park, where they raise money and the entire school reads a book. And I've been at the event each year for the last few years, and if you want to put a hockey helmet on, because it's a very crowded place. And that cafeteria, they had the author last year. I'd say the turnout of parents and children had to be in the 70 to 80 percentile. The hundreds and hundreds of students and parents, the author, people lined up to see a child's author like it was a professional basketball or football player. The line was 50 deep, and so I believe parent involvement, to Mrs. Facey's presence here tonight, is very a high level of involvement, and I think it's got a great buzz about it. So I think that we could give the Collicott an A in school culture and parent involvement.
And to Mr. Phelan's point, how I've always said the triangle, how people feel about the school, the teacher, is how the child's going to feel. And to Mr. Phelan's point, the enthusiasm at that One Book, One School event, the kickoff, rolling out the title. Again, your PTO representatives that come to my monthly meeting, they have a very unique model at the Collicott. They have 4 couples, moms and dads, parents, and they each take a different role. And so I'm in my second year with 2 fathers from the Collicott, and they well represent you on the PTO president's board.
Great group,
But also at the Abbey Park, there were more than 12 teachers present.
And
And
you're correct, well said, there was.
It was 8 o'clock at night, and they don't all live in Milton like I do.
That's right.
They come from all over. So there's a lot of involvement, yes.
And you know what, these report cards, the school committee likes, I shouldn't speak for them, but when the site councils come, and site councils are important, it's all in relationships, and the leader of the school sets the tone for the building. And I want to publicly recognize Principal Janet Sheehan. Here with us tonight in the audience is our Cunningham principal, Jonathan Redden. And people will sometimes say across the state, the two schools, or somebody new to the community will ask about two independent schools that have their own philosophies, but the shared space. And I want to recognize Janet Sheehan, and it speaks to her leadership and to Mr. Redden's leadership that they've developed an unbelievable partnership in these shared first grades. Mr. Redden giggles all the time and tells me that when Janet Sheehan and he go into the first grades, they think they have two principals. And so the model has worked, and again, I believe that the teachers in that huge plant of 1,100 children, the two of you set the tone, and the way that you work together and maximize the resources, you learn from one another, and you complement one another. But I want to recognize Principal Sheehan for setting that tone, and Principal Redden for creating that partnership, the two of you. I'm very, very appreciative. And the people who benefit are the children and the teachers. There isn't an idea that goes to the Collycott that isn't shared at the Cunningham, or an idea that comes to the Cunningham that isn't shared with the Collycott.
Thank you, Superintendent Gormley, and I am very much enjoying our partnership. Thank you, Mr. Redden.
But you're coming tonight, and I have to tell, if you don't mind, Jonathan, I said something to Jonathan. He's involved with something that we're going to do tonight, and he said, "Oh, you don't have to worry, I'll be there. I want to see Janet Sheehan's presentation." And so, for a professional, that's really, that's the ultimate compliment. And again, if it starts at the top, then the children and the teachers feel that kind of support.
Thank you.
I'll just go really quickly. Again, congratulations to all of you, right down to the kids, for these great achievements, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. I just want to comment briefly on the new initiatives that you're undertaking, and I think it's really exciting, and I really believe that, you know, from starting Writers' Workshop in kindergarten to initiating the science notebooks, and all of these initiatives really will lead to great results. It's so difficult to maintain that high level of success that you're enjoying right now, but with all of these initiatives, I'm sure that you'll continue to do that. I just wanted to ask also about Rita's Workshop. Is there a plan to continue that through, or to grow that up through the other grades, or is it being done in other
As I said,
grades now?
teachers are already implementing Rita's Workshop. Some teachers are implementing Rita's Workshop practices. And so we're looking at this pilot specifically in first grade, but I think I think our leadership team is looking at working with our new coordinators and making some decisions about open court and Rita's Workshop, and most of the new programs are a Rita's Workshop model. So, but we're exploring that now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Collycott Site Council.
Thank you.
All of the information in my happenings would be on the website, or in my email blast.
Okay. So then we'll move on to my report, a couple of pieces. First is the annual report. You were emailed it last time. I asked for any corrections or edits to go back to Ms. Roach in the office. And so what you were emailed, and I'm not going to read it because it's 30-some pages, is the report of the school committee and superintendent of schools for this year. And so I would accept a motion to authorize the school department to submit this for publication in the town report.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Sheridan, second by Ms. Padera. Any comments, questions, discussion on this?
I just want to say, I just think it's so amazing to read that every year and reflect on all that's been accomplished, and it's really exciting to see it all in one spot.
And everyone else at home who will not hear me read it can get it in the town report when it comes out at the beginning of the year. No other comments. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Mr. Walker is out of the room for the moment. Secondly,
I'm sorry.
yes,
Can we post that on the website? It's been voted.
no reason not to.
And the only reason is, I don't know that everybody reads their annual report, and sometimes the print
Really?
is so small, you can't. You know, to your point, it's a great telling of what, all the happenings in our schools, so it's a great thing, I think, to have on our website. Thank you.
Second item under mine is the evaluation of the superintendent. I read it last time. We discussed a couple possible edits to it. I emailed them out to you. I incorporated comments from various people who submitted them as ways to incorporate them, changes. And again, rather than read it again, I would just ask if for a motion to accept this as the evaluation of the superintendent, or if you prefer, I'll read it, but it's up to
Motion to
you.
accept.
Second.
Yes, Ms.
Just
Kelly.
can I ask, what kind of changes, because I don't think I've seen.
It basically was along the lines of incorporating some of Mr. Walker's comments in the text of the body in the end. They're in, appear primarily at the end of Goal 1 because it was talking about student achievement. And it was just a couple of people made suggestions as to how to do it, and I tried to incorporate them within the document. There's no substantive changes in the sense that there's nothing introduced into the document that wasn't on one of the 2 pieces of paper you got last time. Any other comments on the superintendent's evaluation? Hearing none.
Thanks to Glenn and Ms. Bagley-Jones for their editing work.
All right, hearing no more, all those in favor of the evaluation of the superintendent? That's unanimous as well. Next is the superintendent's fiscal 13 goals, as you were, a memo from the superintendent to us dated November 20th, which was included in your packet, actually included in your packet for our last meeting. Due to time constraints, we didn't get to that, so you've had some time to take a look at it. Given that the goals are the basis for the superintendent's evaluation, I think it's reasonable to have a motion to accept these as her goals for the year.
May I
Yes,
speak?
go right ahead.
I was just going to say that we've done some work with our professional organization, and we sent it out to you. I have copies tonight. So the recommended new evaluation tool that we're going to be using, they suggest 1 student outcome, 2 district-wide goals, and 1 leadership professional goal. So I've provided those goals for you with then key actions and benchmarks to follow each of the goals.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
And I probably should have sent this, I know we got this ahead of time, but I just didn't feel like I wanted to send it back. I think it looks great, Mary. I mean, as we said before, my only concern is in Area 1. I don't know how you can say, you are a Wonder Woman, but I don't know how you can say the district's racial achievement gap in mathematics will be reduced by 10%. I mean, where did 10% come from? Is that, and it says it again in the next line too. I mean, obviously, we all want that reduced to 0, but in your evaluation, I just don't know.
Wait, I'll explain that to you,
Okay.
my thinking. One, we have these new targets from the state, and so, again, our goal is for all of our student groups to achieve the targets, and even if in a particular school there aren't the number of children to have the established target, we know how the children are achieving in each of the subgroups, and even if you can see by the chart, even if we continue to make the targets, unless we set a goal for ourselves, and my goals are the goals of the leadership team. So I've explained to the leadership team, and tomorrow, Mr. Phelan and I have a meeting with the principals and the full leadership team. And so unless we put in writing, unless we all work in the same direction, if we continue to make the targets, we won't close that achievement gap. So I believe by saying a 10%, by moving closer in closing that achievement gap. It will give us a goal. It will give us a goal to try to work towards achieving. And again, if we just keep making the targets, we're not going to close the gap between the children, the African-American, Black group and the low-income group at the PS school. So to have those goals, to me, I think it also gives a level of urgency and importance that, again, you can keep making the targets, but if you're going to close the achievement gap, we have to have a goal that we can work towards.
Yeah, can I just follow up
Yep.
on that?
Why don't you turn the mic towards yourself a little bit? A
If
little
I can
science and technology here.
Follow up on that. The other percentages, I don't have a problem with, 85% of the grade 1 English teachers, 70% of leadership team meetings, like, those all make sense to me. I think what it is like, I didn't get what you just said from this first part of it, and you're going to be held accountable for this. So I want to just be really clear, what does this 10% mean? Because really, we want it to be, 100% of our kids are making it, but what, I don't know, is it 10% above the target rate, is it 20?
Yes, 10% above the target rate.
And, okay, but.
So, and again, if we keep making the target, we're not going to close the gap. And so when I share these goals with the leadership team, and I think that you can see through the school improvement plans and when we do the advancement budget, we're all working on the same themes, and if they know that you have expectations of me and I have expectations of their work.
I feel like I'm beating the dead horse, if I can just say one more question. Because, Mary, you know this best, and I respect whatever you have to say on this. I think what it is when I look at growth for students, I want to look at growth for you. So when I look at growth for students, yes, they shouldn't be in the needs improvement category, but you know what? Did they go up to the next level? Did they go up from that level to, are you going to go up? That's what I want to see. And I just feel like you are setting yourself up for this huge, and maybe, I'm the only one thinking this, but I want it to be realistic, and I also want it to be urgent at the same time. And I always like things phrased in the positive. Will increase, will go up, I don't know. You have it as reduced. Maybe I'm just splitting hairs here, but I just want to make it be something that that it's realistic while it stresses the urgency at the same time. So.
Ms. Kelly.
So I apologize, I was not at the last meeting. Was this discussed at last meeting? Okay.
No, we
So-
waited for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I think before we get into the measurement and what the goal is, I think it would be helpful to have a presentation of what the goals are, so that the public can hear exactly what we're talking about, because I think, however, I agree with I think we need to be able to easily determine whether the goal that you've set has been attained. And I think the way it's written here, it's not, I agree with you, I can't determine exactly what that means, and what numbers are we using, and so I guess if I look at this quickly, the gap right now in terms of target between all students and I'm not sure whether that's what we're measuring against, and African-American Black students is about 10. And are we saying we're getting 10% above that 10?
We're getting 10%, we're going to make the target for the African-American students, and then take 10% of the 87 moving towards closing the gap.
So I guess the point is that maybe if somehow we could reword that to reflect some of the numbers, I think, and then we can have maybe a more informed discussion about what exactly does that mean, and those kinds of things.
I can bring that back. We have a meeting with the leadership group tomorrow, because whatever this is their work. And so I can bring back 2 or 3 options discussing with them and at our next meeting.
Ms. Sheridan.
Excuse me, it's December, and I think that it's clearly evident that Ms. Gormley has been working on these goals. I'm sorry, I have a cough, and I have a cough drop in my mouth. She's been working on these goals, and all the work that we're seeing from our site councils and from our schools is in this vein. What I'm hearing people say is that they're have a concern with, just not a concern, but just some clarification around the specific percentages in SMART goal number 1. Would it be possible for us to, in essence, approve these goals? And with just to come back and say that we'll finalize these actual percentages at some point? I just feel like we owe the superintendent approval of these goals in a timely fashion.
Ms. Kelly?
I agree with that sentiment. However, I don't feel comfortable just voting goals on paper that haven't been discussed publicly. And so if we want to take up time during this meeting, which I'll be all in favor of having the superintendent present them, if that's what she wants, then I'd be fine with that. And then if we want to vote at the end of that, that's fine as well. I just think this is goal setting. This is, one of our major responsibilities, is one of the superintendent's major responsibilities, and to have, basically moving pieces of paper as opposed to having the discussion and talking it out, I think would not be the best thing at this, if we can avoid it.
And so when we've been talking about the new tool, the actual goals didn't change since August, the development of getting them ready for you for the new tool. And so working on the advancement budget for tonight, it would be clearer, I think, if I did a PowerPoint on them, so that rather than just reading them to the public, if it's all right with the committee, if I, at our next meeting, again, there are areas that we've all discussed, I'll bring a presentation forward, if that's all right. Agreeable with everybody.
Okay.
It's not that much work.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Walker.
Just a couple of points. And in general, I'd be in favor of voting these. I think I've got a couple of questions, though. One is the evaluation period that we're talking about is July to June, same as the fiscal year. So when we come back to assess performance in 2013, we've got an outcome that occurs outside of that period. So I'm not sure. Ideally, we'd want the outcome to be occurring in the evaluation period, so we can evaluate whether or not it happened. So we're talking about a period that ends June 2013, and an outcome that ends in September 2013.
And Mr. Phelan's looking up on the new tool. Sometimes they've suggested to make them over 2 years.
Mid-cycle.
Well,
So it's a mid-cycle.
So we should structure it so that we've got a year 1 outcome and a year 2 outcome. The other point is on the leadership professional practice goal. I'd like to see something that's a little more qualitative and quantitative. Simply saying that 70% of the agenda will be devoted to this is not by any means a stretch goal for you. That just says you'll write the agendas a certain way. I'd prefer to say that a percentage of teachers will be trained or developed in this area by this date, something that, again, is consistent with some of the advancement objectives we'll be talking about later. I'd like to see a little more quantitative measurement there, quantitative and qualitative.
Anything else on this? All right, then we will revisit this.
Thank you.
Just a couple other pieces before we move on to the budget article. Just so you know, I've been attending the meetings of the Consolidated Facilities Committee on your behalf monthly for the last year or so. They've put together their budget for fiscal 14, and we're also putting together Mr. Ritchie's putting together basically an explanation of how the initial consolidation has worked. To the point where they, now have an electrician in-house. They now have a worker who's actually a roofer, so they're getting some things done that way. They've started to combine some of the maintenance contracts and change the way those are followed. And they've introduced a tracking system that we have used here in the schools town-wide to monitor work reports and so forth. So we are looking for him to put together a presentation, possibly at the Springtown meeting, since it'll be the first real progress report on consolidated facilities, so just briefly how things are working. So he has some very nice stories anecdotally of money saved and so forth by doing things in-house that have saved a lot of money. So we want to try to get some of that good news out, so we'll let him do some of that. I also attended the Master Planning Committee meeting for the town a couple weeks back in a very cold room in the library one evening. They seem to have had the air conditioning on. And so that, they've had some architects in to sort of survey the state of the town, and they're going to begin this a series of public forums and talk about visioning and so forth, and sort of the first stage of a master plan. So that will be coming up in January and February, some of those public forums. So they'll be coming forward as well. And also, just yesterday, Assistant Superintendent Phelan and I met with Representative Rogers from the House, talking about, it was a very well-timed meeting because it came out immediately, like 2 hours after the 9 seat cuts hit. So we could talk about legislative agenda and so forth for the upcoming sessions. That was a productive meeting as well. So there are some things going on in this season I just thought I'd bring you up to date on. And with that, we'll move along to our fiscal 14 budget in the Finance Subcommittee. Ms. Kelly.
Just to frame this, tonight what we'd like to talk about is the administration's proposal for an advancement budget, or an advancement component of our budget that, based on all the data that we're hearing, will help move the district forward and help all students succeed. And so we won't really be talking about all the nitty-gritty details of our entire budget, but really we want to concentrate on presenting this to fellow members who haven't heard about it yet, but also the public. So that's our goal, and I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. So the Finance Subcommittee charged us with coming up with an advancement budget, initiatives. We met with our leadership team and our principals, and then our full leadership team with all of our administrators. And again, the charge was moving the Milton Public Schools ahead. And I think that they appreciated the school committee asking, what do we need to move the system ahead? They believe the parents and the citizens want a school system that's looking ahead. We took all of their ideas and combined and prioritized, and these are the initiatives that we're putting ahead for the 2013-14 advancement budget. Stop me at any time. The vision of the Milton Public Schools. The vision of the Milton Public School System is to build and strengthen a dynamic community that challenges all students to thrive and achieve. In order to create the educational system that supports this vision for all students and advances the Milton Public Schools, the following advancement budget initiatives are among the priorities of the FY14 Milton Public Schools budget. The advancement budget initiatives are emphasizing early literacy achievement, K through 3, closing the proficiency gaps, K through 12, advancing science and STEM, again, for the viewing public. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math initiatives, K through 12. Initiative 1, and the Finance Subcommittee and Mr. Walker presented a format for us. And so first, on each of the initiatives, the research that supports the initiative. Dr. Nani Lassay, in Turning the Page, Refocusing Massachusetts for Reading Success 2010, outlines 5 target areas that must be addressed to produce measurable success in reading. 1 is program design and impact. 2, assessments of student outcomes. 3, professional development. 4, curriculum. And 5, partnerships with families. Again, a continuation of that research, very powerful. Reading is the cornerstone of academic success. There is a limited window of time in which to prevent reading difficulties and promote reading achievement. For most children, that happens, or doesn't happen, from infancy through age 9 is critical. By third grade, reading struggles are strongly linked to later school difficulties, as well as behavioral problems, depressions, and dysfunctional and/or negative peer relationships. What's more, research indicates that 74% of children whose reading skills are less than sufficient by third grade have a drastically reduced likelihood of graduating from high school. As a result, these children are unlikely to develop the skills essential for participating fully in this knowledge-based economy and for experiencing life success. Continue with the research, and again, the research is the basis of the resources we're asking for and the metrics that we set and the outcomes. Research, the impact studies have been utilized to examine various relationships between school libraries and student achievement, including demographic data, technology, budgeting, staffing, professional development, and collaboration. These studies, collectively known as the School Library Impact Studies, include research dating back to 1993 from 22 states and 1 Canadian province. That reference is from KCL 2011. These studies concluded that school libraries have a positive impact on student outcomes as they teach 21st century skills, promote achievement, and play a major role in closing the achievement gap. From the impact of school libraries on student achievement, New York Comprehensive Center, 2011. So the research, that's the basis of our initiative emphasizing early literacy achievement. God bless you. The identified need. Why is this a need to be one of our initiatives? 29% of Milton Public Schools' current fourth graders scored below proficient on their grade 3 spring 2012 English Language Arts MCAS. What are the resources required?
I'm sorry, can I just, so the 29%, has that been sort of the running trend? Is that going up, going down? Do you know where we're at in terms of that particular?
I'll give you the exact numbers,
Just so we have an idea.
rather than giving you the last 3 years.
Can I ask a question about it, too?
Sure.
What's 29% mean in terms of number of kids? What do we have for fourth grade students in the district about?
Right,
This-
300,
About 300 per grade, so 29% would represent 30% of 100 is 90 students,
90 students, okay.
roughly.
What are the resources that we're asking for in this advancement budget? Program design and impact. Again, going back to the research in the 5 areas that are essential if you're going to close the gap. We're asking for $124,000 to hire 2 certified literacy specialists or coaches to provide targeted reading and writing instruction to K-3 students identified at risk and to support teachers through co-teaching demonstration lessons and consultation. In the advancement budget, $58,000 to hire 1 elementary librarian media specialist. You understand now for the 4 elementary schools, we have 1 librarian, and then we have an aide who, in the off week, staffs the library so that students can exchange their books. No library classes. Additional librarian will share the responsibilities and support teachers in the implementation of an enhanced literacy program. The position will also increase student access to existing school library book collections. 2, assessments of student outcomes. We're requesting $20,000 to purchase a formative reading assessment program to measure progress in each of the sub-skills of reading and to inform classroom instruction and to monitor progress towards proficiency. In the 3rd area, professional development, $10,000 we're requesting to provide targeted professional development to train teachers and support staff in the use of assessment tools, data analysis, and instructional planning to improve student achievement. In the 4th area, curriculum, $30,000 to purchase language-rich, rigorous, and engaging reading curriculum K through 3, to ensure every student is proficient by the end of grade 3 in the areas of phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension, spelling, and writing. The fifth area, partnerships with families, school-based goals that will target workshops for parents around engaging their children in literacy at home at no additional cost to the district. That would be our first initiative. What are the metrics that were to measure the progress and success? The assessment program, the grade K through 3 formative classroom reading assessments will give us continual feedback of how we're achieving our goal, and the grade 3 spring 2014 MCAS results. And the anticipated outcome, Milton Public Schools third graders will meet the DESE spring 2014 cumulative proficiency index of 92.9. The next initiative, closing the proficiency gaps. The research, a roadmap to closing the proficiency gap submitted by the DESE's Proficiency Gap Task Force, with Jeff Howard being the chief writer, in April of 2010, states that experience tells us there are consistent contributing factors that combine to produce underperformance. Milton's advancement budget addresses 4 of these factors. 1, a lagging early literacy. Lagging reading skills in the early grades, if unaddressed, these deficiencies generate a disadvantage from which many may never recover. Not enough time in school. Children in challenging circumstances may simply need more time in school to achieve proficiency. Third, lack of effective analysis of data. And 4, differences in educator effectiveness. These are 4 of, I believe there were 12 to 13 areas that the report indicated contribute to proficiency gaps. How are we going to address these 4 areas that we have identified? Again, the identified needs. In the spring 2012 MCAS results, we identified 2 proficiency gap challenges in the Milton Public Schools. In the district's cumulative progress and performance index, the African American Black student group had a PPI, a progress and performance index, of 70. That was the only district-wide student group that did not make the target established by DESE. And at the Pierce Middle School, the cumulative progress and performance index, the low-income student group had a PPI of 74. It was the only student group at the Pierce who did not make the target established. So those 2 areas, again, are recognized proficiency gaps. Those 2 student groups. What are the resources needed to close those 2 groups? 1, an assessment program. Again, we have been researching, and there's a program, an ANET assessment software that again tests the students, gives on the established standards that the MCAS then tests. Feedback is given to the teachers every 2 weeks, Mr. Phelan. Direct feedback, whether the students are achieving the goals, meeting the standards. We would purchase that piece of assessment, and again, we'll go into how we're going to use that later in the presentation. Contracted services. $40,000, provide targeted instruction, curriculum, and assessments by certified teachers for extended time on learning before or after school, Saturdays, and/or during the summer, to all students in the district who are at risk of not reaching proficiency on MCAS. Again, we now have a small stipend for, you heard, homework clubs. We have a summer school program that's fee-based. We have the slam dunk that we're able to tap some of our students, but this would be a concentrated effort that every student who had failed or every student at risk of failing would be given this targeted instruction during the summer or on Saturdays. And using this assessment program, if you had students from the 4 elementary schools at grade 4, again, if you're teaching them, they're all at different levels. Using this assessment software, you would be able to target that instruction on Saturdays or target that summer instruction. The third, instructional text and materials, $5,000 instructional materials to support extended time on learning. We would already have the materials within the district. This $5,000 would be any other materials we'd need during this targeted instruction time. Fourthly, professional development, $10,000, training for all staff on closing the achievement gaps and selected staff on the implementation of the ANET assessment software. What would be the metrics we would use to measure the progress and success of this initiative of closing the proficiency gaps? One would be the district-wide formative assessments used in all of our English and math classes that we referred to the purchase of those in our early literacy initiative. Second would be the individual student action plans. Again, identifying every student in these subgroups, meeting with the principals, coming up with plans. Again, what kind of time, what kind of support, what kind of instruction are we going to provide these students so that we close the gap and they make growth. A quarterly review of the effectiveness of the intervention strategies, actually going over every student's plan and having them assessed every quarter as to how this instructional time is actually driving their achievement. The ANET assessment program used in the extended time on learning, and the 2014 MCAS results. The anticipated outcome would be the district's African American, Black student group and Pierce Middle School's low-income student group will achieve DESE cumulative progress and performance index targets on the spring 2014 MCAS. And additionally, individual students who participate in the programs will achieve a student growth percentile of 50 or higher. The third initiative, advancing science and STEM. Again, following the same format. What is the research for this initiative? The 2011 analysis and insights from the Bare Facts of Science Education Survey is a summary of 15 years of STEM research. What are the highlights? Science literacy is critical for all Americans, young and old, scientists or non-scientists. Improving science education for all students, especially girls and underrepresented minorities, should be a national priority and begin at the earliest possible elementary level, since that's where the STEM workforce truly begins. And for those who go on to become professionals, interest in science begins early, research says, and surveys before age 11. What are the identified needs? At grade 5, 37% of the students scored warning or needs improvement. At grade 8, 52% of students scored warning or needs improvement. And at high school, 18% of the students scored warning or needs improvement in biology, based on the MCAS results. What are the resources that we're looking for to advance STEM and science in the Milton Public Schools? One would be a additional curriculum administrator whose primary goal will be to deliver, support, and evaluate science and STEM kindergarten through grade 5. We currently have one science administrator who services teachers K through 12. We're in the area of math, we have one individual at the elementary school for math, one individual that has shared responsibility at the middle school for math, and a math curriculum leader at the high school, the same as in English. We're looking for additional support to really drive the science curriculum and achievement and all the responsibilities that go with that, evaluating. The evaluation portion of that administrator is huge. The second resource in the area of curriculum, $20,000 to purchase text equipment and additional Lego We Do kits for the expansion of STEM program to the second grade, hands-on science materials. $56,000, we worked with Marilyn Decker and Dr. Karen Spalding, identifying the need at the middle school, the purchase of science modules in Earth history, human body systems, waves, electromagnetism, and at the middle school level. The modules include hands-on materials as well as text assessment and software support. 24 units are needed at the middle school and they have some units, so the need is 14 kits needed to complete the full program at $4,000 per kit. The fourth area, professional development through partnerships with local universities, Tufts with the Lego We Do, Bridgewater State University with all of their STEM initiatives that they're planning at the middle school, and the University of Massachusetts. Those are examples of partnerships we have. What would be the metrics to measure the progress and success of this initiative? District-wide grade level assessments of students' mastery at the end of each science unit and of the grade 1 and 2 Lego We Do program, and the spring 2014 MCAS. What are the anticipated outcomes? The district will meet DESE's 5th, 8th, and 10th grade CPI science targets on the spring 2014 MCAS that will show growth in the area of science. For grade 5, 88.3, grade 8, 81.8, and grade 10, 78. We've detailed in the chart at the end the advancement budget in way of staff, technology, instructional texts and materials, and extended time on learning and salaries and professional development for you for each of the 3 advancement initiatives. Again, early literacy, closing the proficiency gaps, and science STEM. And those initiatives would total $515,000. Of that $515,000, there are 4 FTEs that would be increased in the budget. Thank you.
Anything from the committee or from, finance subcommittee?
Yes.
Yes, I thought there might be.
I would just like to commend the superintendent and her leadership team. I think this is just an extraordinary plan for our discussion, which is what should our advancement budget look like? And I'm sure there are questions, but I think it just provides an excellent framework for that discussion. And I want to point out that particularly Ms. Gormley, Mr. Phelan, Mr. Gillis, Marcia Uretsky, and Courtney Walsh all put in a significant amount of time to prepare this, including weekend work. So I'd like to say thanks. I think this provides us with exactly what we need to have this discussion, and I think it will actually serve us well as we start the public discussion.
Ms. Padera.
Yeah, I think it's great to talk about things actually moving forward in budgetary items instead of just, more depressing budgetary items. And I visited Tucker on Monday, and Principal Uretsky was extremely excited about, being able to work on an advancement budget. So it's a great thing to even discuss. I just had a few questions. One of the things that came up in meeting with one of the schools that I visited was a thought in terms of literacy, another item that we might think about. One of the principals mentioned that some of the children that come to us in kindergarten are at a severe disadvantage because it's the first time they've really ever been in school, as opposed to, the new trend is now most kids are in school 2-3 years, sometimes 5 days a week. And so I think at being 2 years behind in literacy and other things, are there things we can do to either, I talked with her a little bit about how do we outreach to the community and make them aware of either low-cost options they might be able to get in. I know we have some low-cost options at the high school, and just getting to that part of the community and getting them in school, getting to them a little earlier, brainstorming those ideas. Because when I thought about that, 2 years of almost 5 days a week full-time, some kids are in preschool. So that was one idea that came up there. And then the other thing going along with that, with low-income children, we have these great programs using technology. Have we assessed whether they're able to use the technology at home? I know Principal Sheen had brought up how they like to use it, give them as much access in the schools as possible. And parenting with families, maybe we should think about that as surveying families and seeing what access they have in technology, study island, things like that for them to practice. Is that a need that we need to address as well? Because it would seem, if they can't access it at home, in terms of doing homework, and same with the other repetitive homework practices, it might be something we need to address to close that gap there. So those are the two questions. And then just, all this is great, but if we get to the budgetary process and we need to prioritize what are the biggest priorities we have, I'm just wondering if the leadership team has talked about that, or if they're, we're going to talk about that after we see what kind of feedback we get.
And if I might just follow up, because I saw people look when you said some children have a 2-year advantage coming from the preschools, that we have our high school preschool program that's on the premises, and then I should have recognized Principal Sheehan for housing Milton's preschool, and the work that we should be doing that we're not doing, going out and, again, working with all of the population in the town, making sure they're aware of the preschool, the opportunities that were there. The children can start at the preschool at the Collycott at 3 years of age. So, again, I'll follow up on the issues that you brought up, but make that an issue with the leadership team, especially when it's really in January and February that people begin to apply to those programs.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Anything else? Ms. Kelly?
Just to piggyback on that comment, is there any way, and granted, as I'm thinking it through quickly, the space issues, but to couple community schools programming, which would be more in the order of a work day, couple it with our pre-K programs, so that if I'm a working parent who needs to put my child in a daycare environment, that I might be able to sort of get a daycare environment coupled with a great preschool environment that would help support the community in that way.
That's interesting, because when Ms. Padera toured the Collycott, and I was on that tour, at 1 o'clock, you're right, the preschool switches, and for everyone who works, you've hit a nerve there.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll look into that. It could be an exciting model.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
First of all, as other people have said, it's an incredible amount of work. I mean, it's a great presentation, and what I really like is I really like seeing the research there about, I mean, we all know why it's important, but it's really, really helpful to see that. So thank you guys for making that work. I just had a couple of clarifications. First of all, I was really shocked about the 29% score below proficiency in 2012 in our grade 3s. I mean, it just seems like for a community like Milton, I mean, I know we've seen the numbers in many different ways, but 30% of our kids in grade 3, to me, that was just really shocking, even though I know that. But I just need to say that. So, Mary, we don't have any literacy coaches now, right?
We have one. Because Tucker is a Title I school, they have one literacy coach and an additional half-time person in math. Okay. So they have 1.5. In the other 3 elementary schools, grades 1 and 2 share one English literacy coach, and all 4 schools for French Immersion 1 and 2 share one literacy coach in French Immersion. So 3 schools share one literacy coach.
But the reading specialist...
That's a reading specialist.
Are you talking coach or reading specialist, or they're one? Because
they do everything. One person.
Okay, that's what I thought, but we used to have both.
Absolutely. And yes, we have, over the years, we had a math coach, and we had literacy specialists. So now when you go into the Glover, Collycott, and Cunningham, all of the existing SPED support, they're there for children with special education IEPs, other than the one literacy person that services 3 schools. Mrs. Kelly, you had a question?
So we have, I thought, 2 what we call reading specialists beyond Title I. Is that correct or no? It's 1?
Well, one would be in French, you're right, that services 4 buildings.
It doesn't matter, I don't,
Okay.
let's just get totals, just so I.
2.
Okay, so we do have 2.
2.
Outside of the Title I funding.
Right.
Got it.
And one services 4 schools and the other services 3. Grades 1 and 2, they're targeted to.
Ms. Sharon?
So again, excuse me, this is so thorough and a great document to have. I was looking at the staff and wondering, kind of on the same lens that Kristen was looking through the staff, how many of these positions have we had previously, and we're just trying to get back to where we have been in the past? You know, these are positions that have been cut due to budget constraints in the past. So is that...
We had 2 librarians, and now we only have 1. And at the...
At one point, we had 4.
We had 4. We had 4 librarians, 1 in each school.
It wasn't that long ago.
We had 4 librarians, then we went to 2, and now we only have 1. And we've had, I could chart that history for you, just like with the MCAS scores. We've had math coaches over the years, we have had reading specialists, and I would say that individuals should speak to friends and relatives they have in other districts, because I'm an advocate, and my beginnings were as a first and second grade teacher, and these literary coaches, literary specialists are essential. And they're essential, often they do the work and supporting first and second graders who then don't have to get the support by going on an individual plan in special education. So when I speak to audiences, I often say you should ask your relatives and friends in other public schools how many reading literacy coaches they have for the primary grades. They really are integral positions. They will drive, they will help to close the proficiency gaps, and they will drive the achievement of our students. And again, they're the support that then children will not have to, often children with that support for 2 years then might not have to go on a IEP in the special education world. They might just need that kind of support for 2 years.
Sure.
So I'd just follow up with that, Ms. Gormley, and say that you're only asking for 4 FTEs, full-time equivalent positions, where in the past we've had probably double that number in these positions, excluding the curriculum administrator for the elementary science level, which I think is absolutely critical. And you spoke to it so eloquently in the presentation in terms of, you know, just the inequity with the other subjects, the other content areas that they have support throughout the grades, and I think that that's a very important addition to trying to get us back to where we have been, closer to where we have been in terms of staff in the past, but also adding that science person, I think.
Mrs. Kelly, if I might, Mrs. Kelly brought up in Finance Subcommittee, and the leadership team brought up in, again, in some districts, they hire teachers, specialists in science to go into the elementary grades to teach the science. And so even the leadership group talked about this, debated it, and again, we're really looking at it. We put the position here because right now all of our teachers teach science. They need the support, but we also have to evaluate the level of their instruction if we're going to improve the achievement. And we can co-teach, we can give them the professional development, but we have to evaluate their science lessons. So those are the kind of discussions that this advancement budget really provided us to talk among the leadership team about the best use of staff.
Which I think brings up an opportunity, and granted it's more research, but if you go to our highest performing science districts, what is the model that they're using for elementary all the way through in terms of science? And is that something that we should research and find out? But the other thing, it gives an opportunity, although maybe I'm not, again, talking off the top of my head, but if you actually have a science teacher coming over, taking taking over that science, that class, it frees up that teacher to do other work, to concentrate on the other subjects. To Kristen's comment earlier, those elementary teachers have to be experts in everything. And, you know, if maybe we can cut that down by one, wouldn't that be a great thing for them to be able to concentrate on their other subjects that they do need to be experts in? So definitely something to think about.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
Mary, one of the things you said on this was there's not enough time in school, that for some kids, there's just not enough time in schools. I don't see a plan. I mean, I'm just curious what your plan for that would be.
Well, I thought this is part of my core, that I believe, just as the research said, for some children, it's just more time. And so it was very timely this week on the news. You may have seen that the federal government has identified 5 states to send federal dollars to lengthen the school year. And Massachusetts is one of the 5 states, and I believe it's Holyoke and Fall River? Lawrence and Fall River. Fall River are going to get those valuable dollars to close those achievement gaps and have the students in school longer days. And I know the hours that you have children in school, they have to have the finest instruction, materials, but for some children, it's that extra time. It's pre-teaching, some of these higher level classes, reteaching, for some children, filling in the gaps in the skills. And so we're really looking at Saturdays or during the summer, setting up, and again, identifying every one of the children who are at risk of failing or have failed, and making sure that they're in those programs. So it's not going to be a Saturday program where some children might go and some children might not be able to go. We've been talking to other districts, and we've been actually looking at the summer model, whether it's better to go 3 full weeks. When you think of it, all of your children probably went to camp over the years, and so making this an experience that there might be a part of it that's recreation, but bringing the children in for 3 solid weeks. You know, if you're going to go into an honors class, you have that pre-teaching, or you're going to get the skills during 3 solid weeks of instruction that they're going to pre-teach that math and reading program before you go into the 5th grade. So you're going to have some of that, you're going to have that knowledge. You'll even be able to ask the questions. That's something that somebody who's not achieving sometimes can't even participate in the discussion. And so the possibilities, again, for closing the achievement gaps and driving instruction, to be able to start with that kind of program, and again, not a huge amount of money compared to what some initiatives really have done. We remember, Ms. Bagley-Jones will remember that one of our prior superintendents, Mary Grasser O'Neill, drove the instruction at the middle school in Boston by being the first school that extended the school day. And the results of that time were phenomenal. It's proven, well, you saw the research, proven. Some children just need more time.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
It's important. I certainly wouldn't want to be on the record with anybody that I was agreeing with you about extended time in school, so let's just be very clear so that my children don't yell at me about that. Seriously. But I do want to say one of the things is that Milton High School and Pierce libraries, I don't really believe that they're fully open after school. 4:45, 4 o'clock is not fully open to my mind after school, and that's just like a huge gaping hole. I don't even know if Pierce is open after school anymore. Is it till 4 or?
Monday through Thursday till 3:30.
3:30. So
your point is that
it's not enough.
That's the stipend we have.
Yep.
And this money we would be able to look at all of those options, and which of those options would drive the, you know, I gave that analogy today, and I said, somebody who's in honors calculus, if they come up to the library, this would be targeted that the person who's in the library would be able to help them with their honor calculus. Or we've looked at a model where they bring high school students who are achieving in math and do their community service working in the after-school program.
My point is just almost simpler than that, in that we want kids in school longer times, and yet we can't have our after-school libraries open till 5:30. You have kids who are student athletes, they can go home, but they can't come here and study because they've got to come back for practice, or you have kids who don't have a way to get home unless they take the school bus, like my kids, so therefore they could never come to the library to study after school. So I really just want to say, one of the ways that we can better use our libraries is to really try to focus on having fully staffed libraries at the Pearson Middle School. Elementary kids you're not going to let walk home alone, but, middle can, but that's a resource we have that we're really not using to the full potential, in my opinion, my experience as a parent. And the other point was $40,000 to provide targeted instruction. I'm glad to see some targeted instruction, and that's what you're talking about with the summer stuff. But it also, I guess it's a semantic thing, but it says it's about reaching proficiency on MCAS. And for me, it's also about reaching those kids that are hard to engage. And kids that are turned off to school are not going to say, ooh, sign me up for summer program. Sign me up for Saturday program. They're not going to want to do it. So, I'm always going to bring it back to the social emotional piece of it. How do we get some money for mentors in there? How do we, reach those kids who just go, yeah, whatever, because school has never been fun for me, so therefore, I'm not going to engage. And I think that that's really important. I look at the Saturday program that some of our kids do at Milton Academy that's purely enrichment. They study Egypt, and they do all these hands-on, really cool things. Kids are in line to get into that program. How can we make our programs more like that? And then the last thing was just, I do think things about the mentorship programs. We try every year to get grants. We try every year to do what we can, and we're not making any progress on that. So I do think that that's really important. Mary, did I? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Perfect. Ms. Keller, you had something.
No, I think I'm good.
Good. Anyone else? The subject of Mr.
I have a motion.
So I just wondered if you could tell us what the dollar amount is that's associated with this?
$515,000.
So the budget, the advancement budget that that's the additional amount. I'm looking at the whole budget number.
Ms. Kelly, Mr. Walker?
Well, I think the hope tonight was just to talk about the specifics of the advancement budget, to hear all the reasoning behind it, and really just to talk, I think, but Mr. Walker, please jump in, that we were hoping to really get your commitment to the advancement budget itself, which is the $515,000 that we're talking about. And then the hope was at the next meeting, which we're hopefully scheduling for next Wednesday, to actually take all of the details and put it all together to get a final vote. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or-
We don't have, do we have a meeting scheduled for next Wednesday?
We didn't have one originally on our schedule. One has been posted in case we needed it, that's my understanding.
Posted in case we need it.
Mr. Gillis.
But to answer your question, Linda Lee, an advancement budget would be $38,379,860. That would be $515,000 above if we had the level service budget carrying everything forward.
Mr. Walker,
We'd really like to do this discussion in two stages. So tonight, we wanted to talk about the advancement budget, the cost of that. Next week, we'll talk about level service, level dollar, all of that. But it's going to get, without the backup supporting information, it's going to get a little confusing if we start to talk about level service, because there's a whole lot more to talk about with regard to level service, particularly this year.
Ms. Stern.
So if this is the recommendation of the leadership and the finance subcommittee, that this advancement budget is the one that we would like to put forward. You've just made a beautiful case for why we should support this. I would make a motion to approve
Funny,
or
that's the
endorse.
motion I was about to make. Second.
And I think that we should then forward this to the warrant committee.
We can't this is not in a form that would be suitable for the warrant committee to assess.
Mr. Kelly.
So I think the thinking was we wanted to do it a little bit differently this time, right? Because typically what we've talked about in the past is we've concentrated on the cuts. What are the cuts necessary to get to a level dollar? We never have the opportunity to sit down. The administration never really gets the opportunity to spend weeks and weeks, which essentially they have, to say, what are our top priorities? What are the things that we think that we can put in place that will really move this system forward? And so in terms of, and I apologize that I didn't sort of set the stage, but our goal tonight was to really talk about this and to talk about the specifics. And, you know, if you people have some things you want to add, which it sounds like maybe some of you do, that's the discussion we wanted to have. And then we will put it together in our next meeting with all of the details around, you know, what is it going to take to roll the present system forward, and then this would basically be part of that as well. And then we'd get to the bottom line numbers that we would then forward to the warrant committee if everyone was in agreement, or if the majority was in agreement. And I know that's definitely different than we've done it in the past. And, you know, I'll be the first to apologize. Our timetable is very late, and I apologize for that. We need to do better next time on this. But it was more important for us, I think, to be able to get to this point where we can talk about good programs in moving the system forward than to crunch it all together and get it all taken care of in one night.
Ms. Sheridan.
And I appreciate the time that was spent on this, on getting us to this point. But I'm sure that somewhere in your numbers, I mean, in the budget that you have, obviously it's not this document, but that you have a level service number that's embedded in this. And I just honestly don't see a need to have another meeting next week just to discuss that piece of it. If we know that this is what we want to send forward, that I would recommend that that would be our next step.
I don't often say this, but you have to trust us. There's there are a number of discussions that we need to have about the level service budget that are unique this year. We need to set the stage as well for that discussion and for the discussion with the warrant committee.
Ms. Padero.
So what's the timeline in terms of, since we don't have a meeting scheduled, what's the timeline in terms of when we have to meet before in order to present to the warrant committee?
We do have a meeting scheduled, don't we?
No, that's what we're saying.
Well, there wasn't one on original calendar. It's been posted for next week.
Oh, it has, okay.
So we could meet next week at this time.
But what's the answer to that question?
I'm sorry?
What's the answer to Becky's
Yeah, what's the timeline?
What is the timeline for getting into the warrant committee?
What's our deadline for that?
It's passed.
We basically asked for an
Yeah.
extension. We're in borrowed time.
The normal requirement was that we submit a budget like every other department by December 1st. I asked the chair of the warrant committee if we could have 2 weeks, so we got a 2-week extension. So we have to get it to them no later than the 14th.
Because they had contacted me actually 2 days ago to see if we could meet with them next Wednesday to talk about budget scenarios. And I said, I wasn't sure that we didn't have a meeting next Wednesday of our own, which will be interesting because once we hit the 12th for them, I don't know when we would next meet with them. I don't know how late they are going into December before.
I don't know, but it'll have to be after the 12th.
I just asked a logistical question. So if we do go ahead and meet on the 12th and look at the level funded budget, then we need to meet with the warrant committee to go over both, and we're past our deadline to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no,
No.
they don't necessarily meet with you by December 1st.
Oh, okay.
They ask for the information by December 1st. And our information, is half the town's information. I mean, it's the largest budget by far. It generally takes a little longer to put together than many budgets. So not being there on December 1st is not exactly unusual. In fact, probably it's more unusual if we actually had it there on December 1st. But we're usually pretty close in the last few years. They are going to want to meet with us sooner rather than later because it's such a big budget, because there are issues involved in it that they're going to want to talk about.
And I think typically in the past, we haven't met with them in December. I think we've met in January.
Well, I'm just mentioning that we had an invitation to meet with them in December.
Right, which again is unusual. I'm not sure what's up, but hey.
So then I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What would we get next week
Right.
that is different? I mean, obviously I know they're different, but what are we actually looking at next week?
We're looking at what it will require to provide the services to all the students we now have next year, given specific things that we know. And that's a much more detailed discussion that we would like to separate in terms of
Are we talking a
presentation.
level-funded budget?
Right, so just to submit what our budget, our desire, if we were to get any funding possible, it would be this budget right here, the advancement budget, plus what we'll call the rollover. But there are specifics in the rollover that we need to talk about that are, this year is unusual, and those are the kinds of things that we want to talk about in a separate discussion and presentation. And the hope was we were only going to talk the budget, so it wouldn't be, a 4-hour, 5-hour marathon, but that we would be able to present those in enough detail that you all would.
So that was my next question. So next week's meeting will be dedicated just to budget?
Although we did put off the superintendent's goals. So it's looking to me like it has two items anyway.
Well, I, as much as I would prefer not to meet next week, it is a very busy time of year. These folks are very busy and tired. It doesn't feel like we have the information, I mean, from you, you've done a lot of work, you've all done a lot of work, I'm not casting any stones, but what would we actually discuss right now? And I really don't want to meet next week, but I understand. So, I'm already getting tired now. So.
Well, the motion on the floor is to accept the $515,000.
I think it's a moot point now because we're not going to go forward with this.
We can accept this component of it if someone wants to add additional, but the point is, this is the point, is we wanted to be able to discuss this. If people don't believe one of these things is something we should put forward, this is where we would have that discussion. If you think that, 2 literacy specialists is too much, or it should be 3, those are the discussions that we would hope to have during this discussion. And then ultimately, if everyone agrees that 515 for advancing the system forward is the right number, then that will be great. Then we can basically put that to the side, and next week we can devote ourselves to, basically that rollover, the rollover issues.
So I guess I would say again that I believe that this advancement number has those other numbers in total, although we don't have them in front of us. So I think that this is probably a moot point to, if you want us just to approve this, what you presented tonight, is that what you're looking for?
We do.
Yes.
So the motion is on the floor, on the table.
Okay, so the motion is to approve this advancement budget. Ms. Gormley.
I just have a question. So I heard, look at the preschool with the community schools and look for outreach for our preschools. I heard mentors, and I heard libraries. So those are areas that you want me to look at beyond the advancement budget, or look at how we can look at our existing funds.
And I had, at the same time, you look at pre-K access, look at daycare, and home access to technology.
put that all under the preschool. But, oh, no, the technology is one that
Yeah,
I
I think
missed.
that's broader than preschool.
So is just, so I get this straight, is the idea that the superintendent should be looking at revising this advancement budget with those ideas in mind, or that's just, these are just other issues for the superintendent to deal with in her copious
They're
free time?
related issues that don't affect the advancement
Right,
budget,
I think
bottom line.
this is a component of the budget, right? I think what has been discussed is the initiatives themselves and how perhaps with no dollar impact, but always is, we could try and attain some of the things we've talked about and mentioned here. I think that would be great to be able to keep it under those initiative umbrellas.
I think that,
Ms.
for
Megan.
me, it's hard to, I love the idea of an advancement budget, and I really appreciate all the effort and work that's gone into it, but I feel like, what's the foundation that it's based on? I feel like I need to see that as well.
Without a
So-
doubt, and I understand what you're saying. The problem is, I think, that sometimes when you start discussing the big,
Yeah.
you get lost in all the things that we know are going to be problematic. And so this was an opportunity to have the administration work on something that advanced the system and present it to the community cleanly and say, listen, if there were no, and granted, next week we're going to be talking about challenges, budgetary challenges, but if we were to have, if somehow more money would be coming down from the state, these are the things the administration would like to see put in place next year to move the system forward.
Okay.
Anything else? So we do have a motion on the floor, which is to accept the advancement budget as presented, $515,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the Finance Subcommittee?
Just, thank you, and I apologize, I have not been as on the ball as perhaps I have been previous years. So I thought a message went out to everyone asking if we could have a meeting next Wednesday. Do we have obstacles to having a meeting next Wednesday? And especially keeping in mind it's a limited meeting, I just want to make sure that we have a plan to get to where we need to, which does require another meeting for us. And whether it's Wednesday or another day, I don't know, but I think we need to put that on the table and figure out where we are.
Anyone have a problem with a meeting next Wednesday?
Well, I have plans, but I'll have to change them, and I don't know, I just feel like it wasn't really communicated that well to us, the whole process, and
Right.
I'm feeling a little frustrated around that, but
I appreciate it, and again, I apologize. We typically have a calendar, we try and keep to it. I think we just haven't got to that level of detail this year, and hopefully, like I said, we'll do better next year. But I think the perspective and the way it's being presented to the community hopefully will help us in the long run. So I appreciate you having to change your schedule if that's what's needed, but I think it's...
so I guess I would just ask if Ms. Gormley feels that she wants to do, if talking about next week's agenda, if it would just be the budget, or if we should ask her in 1 week to do a presentation on her goals in addition to this work, or would that be something she would rather put off until January?
I can do the PowerPoint on the goals. We'll have to work with, we'll work with Finance Subcommittee on the presentation on the budget.
But that's what I'm saying, I feel like that's enough for you to do in 1 week, and from my perspective, it's okay for you to put it off until January if that's...
I think that will be, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think we'll be able to get both of them done.
Ms. Kelly?
But to that point, excuse me, I think the whole goal process, we're sort of in a revisionist year, right? I think you and your leadership team are basically working on the goals that you've been talking about for a long time. So if the committee would agree, I would prefer have us concentrate on the budget, have that be the only item we really talk about at that next meeting, and if we could put the presentation of the goals, which is, again, from my perspective, an important part of just our communication with the community, off till after the holidays, I think that would make a lot of sense. If the committee is in agreement.
Ms. Padera?
Yeah, I think the shorter the meeting, the better, and the budgetary meeting is, from what the meetings I've attended, is going to be enough to discuss. That's what I think.
All right. So anything else? I hear that we can have a meeting next Wednesday, and so we'll schedule it with just the one item and the usual boilerplate for citizen speak and so forth, but basically one action item for the meeting. All right. Anything else from finance?
That is it, thank you.
Policy. Sheridan.
So we have several policies. First, we'll start with BBA, and this is a reapproval. We had looked at this document and referenced the MASC recommended policy that's there. So what you're looking at really is the same as the policy that we had previously. The only addition is adding the MASC cross-references that you see there.
Do you want to just go through the three reapprovals so we can
Sure.
vote them at once?
The second one, BBAA, again, we looked at the MASC suggestions. Number 6 that we have in our, under our duties, this is the school committee member authority and duties. Number 6, they don't have in the MASC recommendations. It says to respect the privacy of internal discussions conducted on the assumption of privacy. And so we decided to keep that one as it had been in our previous policy. Number 8, we deleted the word or, that he/she, make it, and actually at the top in the third paragraph, no member of the committee by virtue of his, it should say /her office. And then we added number 11, which says to refer questions and comments which are...
Addressed to the school committee.
Right, addressed to the school committee, to the chair for a response. And that was something that we have put in practice on the school committee and decided to add it to our list of responsibilities and then changed 10 and 12. I mean, 10 to 11 and added 12. And the source is the MASC. Do you want to take these, but comments?
Well, there was one other reapproval, right, BEC?
Okay.
We just
So-
go through them, we'll see if anyone
Okay.
wants to take them apart, but otherwise we'll take them
What was the
together.
other one, I'm sorry?
The third one is BEC, executive
Executive
sessions.
sessions.
Okay.
So when we looked at this, Mr. Walker asked that we look at all of the Attorney General's open meeting law guidelines that they have. So when you look at our new policy at the top where it says all meetings of the school committee are open, that down to where it says the 10 purposes, no, I'm sorry, through number 4, are all exactly the same as what we had previously had. Excuse me, just one second. Then what you're looking at now says the law puts specific limitations. That's consistent, and we just added numbers 1 through 10 directly from the Attorney General's guide. And other than that, the policy is the same. So we took the wording directly from the Attorney General's open meeting law guide.
So these 3 items are for reapproval. So I accept a motion, if you want to vote them singularly, or if you want to just a motion to reapprove the 3 of them, however you appreciate a motion to some extent.
Motion to reapprove all 3.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Bagley Jones, second by Ms. Padera to reapprove these 3 policies. Ms. Kelly?
So on BBA number 5, should we include some of the language of the new sort of process for setting goals and that kind of stuff? I mean, it refers to the strategic plan, which we don't have yet. and it refers to objectives, but really what is being said, I think, now is goals. I'm just wondering if we just want to marry those two together, and I'm not sure that I have a suggestion for,
I don't think I'm clear on what you're saying. Number 5,
Number 5, sorry, the last
educational
last
planning and
sentence.
evaluation?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if we want to tie this into the whole goal setting and superintendent evaluation and use the same language. It basically, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm just wondering if we might want to take this opportunity.
We
rather
can
than-
revisit that. So we could take that out of the discussion right now, or out of the vote, actually?
All right, so the,
If I might.
go ahead.
I think we should think a little bit about what this is and what it isn't. This isn't the one where we're looking to track. We're looking to define exactly what the evaluation process is. So I would suggest that educational objectives is fine and is exactly what we do, and strategic plan is aspirational. We don't have one yet, but we will have at some point. And it says includes but is not limited to, so I don't think this constrains us in any way, and I'd suggest we probably shouldn't spend a whole lot more time on it.
It really doesn't matter to me. I just wanted to try and keep
Good.
us together.
All right. So now I hear a motion to approve all 3. Once again. Reapprove. And I don't hear any further comments, so I will take a vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
So now we go to policy CBI, the superintendent's evaluation. Sorry.
And is this from MASC? Where is this coming from?
Right, so that is, this is the second reading. This is, we discussed this at our last meeting. Sorry, Mrs. Kelly.
That's okay.
This was based on a letter that was, or, I'm sorry, on a draft that was presented to us by the Council for DESE and...
Council for...
MASC, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it was from MASC.
Right.
And this is basically the suggested wording from MASC?
Yes, yes it is.
Are you just saying that, Mr. Walker?
No.
Just to
Have you ever
avoid-
known me to just say anything? No.
It was the expression on your face that I was trying to read, Mr. Walker. Okay.
All right, well, I would accept a motion to approve the second reading of policy CBI.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walker, second by Ms. Sheridan. Any comments on this? Ms. Kelly?
The committee shall annually establish standards and indicators for the evaluation of the superintendent. I don't think we're establishing any standards. I think we're establishing goals and objectives. And again, this is where I'm trying to get everything to fit together. Go ahead.
I think with I have copies, we sent, the standards are already established for you by
Exactly.
assuming, by agreeing that you're going to use the new tool. They're
Correct.
already set for you.
Correct.
I
I
have
think we
copies.
voted that we establish those standards. So this may need to be reworded based on where we are as a committee along this process. I guess that's the way I would put it.
Well, I read
I'm
this
not
as
sure.
saying that the committee, by establishing standards, one way to establish standards is to vote to use the new superintendent instrument, which,
So if we want to remove annually, then I think that makes sense. Maybe that gets
Well, I
us
mean-
closer. Because
Well-
we're not establishing standards annually. Are we saying that we want to vote on what the DESC standards are every year?
I suppose a new school committee next year could say, we don't want to use it anymore, and we want to develop our own instrument.
Okay?
I
If you
mean,
wanna
I
put that-
don't think it's likely, but I mean, I don't think we can constrain.
But when you say
Not
from a
to.
policy perspective that you will, that you'll annually establish, that requires us putting it in the calendar and doing a vote. If that's the way we want to handle it, that's fine. I'm just wondering if it's the best way to create our policy.
We certainly have the authority to do it each year.
Correct.
And I think it's wise to say that we will take a look at that. We may, by default or implicitly, decide we're not going to look at standards in that particular year when we approve the superintendent's goals without any discussion of standards. But I don't think it's a problem at all to say we shall annually look at standards and indicators, which is exactly what we should do. And to Mr. Pavlicek's point, I think depending on the composition of the committee, we've all been together for a while, but if the composition changes, a new member or members might wish to establish new standards in any given year.
Okay. Then, just as a follow-up, this should go into our calendar somewhere in terms of placing it. Because
Yeah, but
this is what happened, unfortunately, just being here a few years. We do all these policies, but then we never fit it into our operations, right? We have great policies on paper, and then we get, called on the table to say, you're not living out your policy. So these are where we need to connect policy with operations, and I don't have a problem with that. I just think we need to make sure we do it.
right, but I as you and I have agreed, I think our challenge is timeline, not in this case, not whether we're actually practicing the policy that we have. And by that I mean, if we need to discuss and finalize goals earlier in the period, ideally before the period, but at the very least in the early part of the evaluation period. And I think in that same discussion, I mean, if you want us to be more explicit, we can, but I would submit that the discussion of the superintendent's goals in any given year is also a discussion of standards and indicators. It has to be.
No, I agree.
So I would simply say we just need to do that earlier on our timeline, but I think we're okay on making sure that we do that each year. It's just that we do it much too late in the year.
Okay.
Any further discussion on CBI? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of second reading, approving by second reading policy CBI? That's unanimous.
And finally, we have our grade 1 assignment, which I read at the last meeting, and it's here for approval.
So I'll take that as a move.
That's a motion.
Motion to approve on
Second.
JGA on a second reading, second by Mr. Walker. Any discussion on this? Ms. Kelly?
How are students not enrolled in MP at Milton Public Schools as of March 1st? How is their assignment addressed?
Mr. Phelan wants to answer that.
Mr. Phelan, go ahead.
They will enroll for the following year.
I'm sorry, I don't really need a discussion, a detail of, I think it needs to be in this policy. I think we need to give guidance to all potential members of our school community, and I think I don't think it's included in here, from what I read.
So the policy subcommittee want to take a look at this to add that
So
in?
we're going to look at delineation of students who enter the Milton Public Schools after March 1st and how they're...
Entering first grade, because I think what we talked about in the past is a second lottery or whatever, it just needs to be detailed so that people...
I agree, it has to address each scenario, so.
So we'll put that one off at this point. Anything else from the policy subcommittee? We have next the Health and Wellness Subcommittee, Ms. Bagley-Jones.
We will be brief. And Becky and Mary and John, feel free to step in. And I think the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the disclaimers is that the committee doesn't take credit for the activities that the staff was already doing. We just try to support them and publicize them and help with broadening it. But it really is the staff who make these things happen. In terms of long-term goals, Superintendent Gormley led a great discussion about long-term goals for our students, staff, and parents around health and wellness. And so we're just continuing, and Mary, jump in here if I'm forgetting it wrong, or Becky, but, we really want to focus on what can we do for each of those 3 target areas, including, trying to promote more health and education professionals, always. And it also looks very different at each level, but we want to make sure we cover all 3 levels. Was there anything else on that, Mary, in terms of your goals that we talked about, that just, I have specific...
The peer, you might want to
I'll
address
talk
the peer
about
later.
those.
And
Yeah.
Ms. Padera and Todd Duchesne's
Right,
project.
I just didn't know if there were anything else about the, okay. So some of the projects that Ms. Gormley has implemented and the Health Committee has supported is the Great Body
Shop.
Thank you. Great Body Shop, which is a health curriculum, basically from a preventative point of view, starting in kindergarten, because we have no health education on the elementary level. So Steve Traster has done a good job of getting us some free resources on that, some teacher training, and we're piloting it in third grade in 2 schools starting in January, and then we hope to have it off and running in September in all of the elementary schools. Again, more work expected from the classroom teachers, but it's part of the long-term prevention to make the foundation for health and wellness clear right from the beginning. So that's our elementary focus. The middle school, for grade 8 orientation, Ms. Beach came up with the idea of incorporating our student leaders. Is everybody familiar with what student leaders are? Maybe I should just say it for the folks still watching this at home. It's high school students who go through a rigorous application process, have to be interviewed, have to get recommendations, and they become basically like mentors for our incoming freshmen. So now we're going to look at having them go down to grade 8 and do some work around what are some of the peer pressures that you're going to come into in the high school, especially around substance abuse issues and other things like that. So that was a great idea, and Karen Spalding is on our committee, and she's taking some of our ideas and bringing them to Pierce as well. And then for Milton High School, there's been a lot of success in the initiatives at the Milton High School. Dr. Knight, who's a Milton parent and substance use specialist at Children's, we talked before in the past about he developed a curriculum. Well, now we're actually implementing it in our 9th grade biology classes with, I'm going to say her name wrong, Amy Tom has worked very hard with him, one of our teachers. So we're actually going to incorporate into biology classes for grade 9 students, what does your brain look like when you are high, when you are drunk, and show pictures of the brain. As the research shows, that's the best way to do that. And at no cost to us, because Dr. Knight has very generously donated this. The Wellness Week that Milton High School already does is really dovetailing very nicely with the Chris Herron presentation. It's late, isn't it? And we're becoming a purple school.
Well, they were going to look into it because there's a cost involved, but the
Right.
girls' basketball team did
So
order the T-shirts.
the girls' basketball team has done their own purple shirts based on Chris Herron's work. Rich Garino, our adjustment counselor, is looking into what would it cost for us to become a purple school, which is a spin-off of
Chris Herron.
Chris Herron's presentation around substance abuse awareness. But there is a cost associated with the program. But the Wellness Week in March, we're going to have this all settled and all out there, and we hope to get 100% participation by staff and by the Milton High School students. Did I get that right at this point? Okay. Absolutely. Long day. And then the other thing...
I'm sorry, I don't know the connection between Chris Herron and purple. So purple is just the indicating...
No, he has a purple shirt campaign. You can become a purple shirt school. So it's a whole visual piece, referral piece, the visual meaning the purple T-shirts, and Mr. Donovan in girls basketball has already started doing his own purple shirt. That's where I was getting tripped up a little
So
bit.
you get educated, Mrs. Kelly, similar to breast cancer survivors and families with the pink ribbons, these purple shirts. Mr. Phelan tells me it's at the professional level, too.
Yeah.
The purple shirts denotes a culture.
So we just keep working away at the same issues, but we have a very interactive and active group of volunteers and school staff, and it's really a very inspiring meeting. In fact, so inspiring that Becky and Todd Ducharme stepped up to volunteer to write a grant. Which would you like to tell us about it?
Sure. The reason she's laughing is because she said, "Would you like to volunteer and do this grant?" And I said, "Absolutely."
I know how to delegate.
But it's actually turned out really great. The school obviously gave us some great support, again, to look at this. So what we're looking at, I'm working with Todd Ducharme, who's our representative from CATS, and a Glover parent as well. And so we're looking at writing a grant. I think they're in the range of $5,000 to $25,000. You probably have the numbers right there. But our grant idea, in the past we've had some success with this, is training our recess aides. And I understand we also have some new blood in the recess aides level. So getting some money to train the recess aides to make the recess more of an activity period, which would target our show of need really is looking at the BMI index stats, which Margaret Gibbons was gracious enough to send us. And there seems to be a real increase from first to fourth grade in those numbers. I think it's around 10 to 15% to 20 to 25%, around that. And so we're going to show that and put that in the grant application and say that, right now I think our students have gym 1 day a week, and we'd like to increase their activity during recess in order to fight that. So we're hoping to train the recess aides, and since it's one-time money, we can train the recess aides, and then the recess aides can do the activities for years to come. And so we're putting that together right now and hoping to get some results on that. The other thing we're looking at, we're doing this grant first, but there's another grant available with that same American Heart Association. And, and I think, I don't know if he knows this yet, but we have a point person in mind. Can I?
Absolutely.
Ben Jones, Coach Jones, who's already done some stuff with the American Heart Association in terms of Hoops for Heart and Jump Rope for Heart, I think. Okay. So I don't know if a lot of people know, but the BMI is just, we only have 1 year of numbers, and it's just started, and basically it's done in the fourth grade. Am I correct? Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check it.
Stands.
It's different grades.
Body mass index, in case.
But some of the elementary.
Different grades.
Yeah, it's different grades, so it's all different grades.
The
Yeah,
families were all
that's why we have the numbers from first to fourth grade, but it is a new initiative that the school nurses, of course, are having to do. The other grant that we're putting forward after we finish this one is the Go Red for Women. And so that's a $5,000 maximum grant, and we're looking at maybe doing a similar type of boot camp at the Pierce for faculty, community members, parents, whoever's interested, just as a way to increase activity, especially since we're starting some new physical activity for the students. We figured we should offer something to parents and staff as well, and maybe coincide with that. So,
Thank you, Becky, for stepping up to do those grants. It just speaks to the need for us to get more grant writers, or get grant writers back again. So it's something else to think about.
Go Red for Women.
Ms. Kelly.
Just on the whole activity, there's a trend in my office to actually stand while you do your work all day, which I am actually participating in, believe it or not. But it made me think about kids in class and the fact that we don't have them stand, how is it that we can think about classrooms and think about being more upright, and just how do we approach it, and how, granted, we might need to change furniture, all these kinds of things, but it's something to think about, that, because just on the flip side of your presentation in terms of recess, I know that there are some kids that live for recess, and live for recess from the perspective of, I'm not going to be told what to do, I can do what I choose on the playground. And getting more structure there, although I think it has some benefits for a lot of people, I think there can be some drawbacks as well. And so are there things during the day that we can think about in terms of the way we structure classrooms and how we do our day in and day out activities that can contribute towards being active as a student population?
If I might, it's interesting that you said that. this committee, of all the committees I've ever sat on, has representatives from all different areas. And Todd DeShane who was formerly with Katz and still associated, did some work in one of the schools, and it piqued my interest to give all the teachers that training on what, if you stop at 11 or you stop halfway through the day, it's just going to be, will you all walk around the room? What could you do with 20 desks in the room that would be an activity that would regenerate their interest? And you also see, to your point, specials all the time in research about the number of schools that have physical activity before school for students when they get to school and the correlation to achievement. So Todd is talking about being able to train our teachers, grade appropriate, in the middle of a 45-minute or an hour lesson, what would you do that would serve as that kind of activity?
That's it. Anything else on the health and wellness report? Okay, then we'll move on. Old business, responses to prior citizen speaks. Next meeting agenda items has now become next meeting agenda item. I think we know what it is. There is no one left for a second citizen speak, so I would entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purposes of negotiation strategy with non-union personnel, administrative contracts, specifically members of the district-wide administration and some principals, and collective bargaining strategy. Not to return to open session, but to adjourn directly from executive session.
So
moved by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Bagley Jones. Requires roll call vote. Ms. Padera?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Ms. Bagley Jones?
Yes.
Thank you all, and good evening.